Good evening and welcome to the January 4th meeting of the Fitchburg Conservation Commission. I now call this meeting to order. Please be advised FATV is conducting an audio and visual video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and address. And seeing no one, hands raised. At this time, I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. And I guess we should start by just calling a roll. I'm not on the commission. In the absence of the chair and vice chair who are out of state, I just serve as staff to the commission. So, Mr. Christian.
Here.
Ms. Jacobs.
Here.
Mr. Donnelly.
Yeah.
Mr. Baker.
Here.
And Ms. Helene.
Here.
Good. We can hear you good. Okay. First item. Let's see. You got to juggle a few things here. So. Oh, and then I'm going to change the screen. Share screen. And share. So people at home can see the first item on the agenda is a continued public hearing from last month. Emmanuel Lutheran Church, 1200 John Fitch Highway, a proposed single-family dwelling. And we see Wes Fliss from Haley Ward representing the applicant, and let me get the plan on the screen again.
All set, Mike?
Sorry, you got to move some windows around so that you can actually get some to the right thing to click on. So Wes, I'll just go with the latest plan that you had sent.
If you could.
Late this afternoon. Okay, so this is a plan revised as of today.
Correct. And also, I don't know, did you, Matt Morrow was going to be here this evening also to speak
I saw
on
Matt's name
behalf of this
on
project.
The sign
so
up. Yes, let me get, and Matt, you are unmuted. I think that's the only folks who are here
Correct.
For that item?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
We can hear you, Matt. Yep, thank you.
Prior to your presentation, I wanted to disclose that
Oh, right.
I have a relationship with your abutter, and I wanted to let you know that and to see if you perceive any conflict of interest in me sitting through the meeting.
Michael, I think despite what an applicant may or may not think, I don't think you can participate because you're a party. You have a relationship with a party in interest and a butter, so you can't participate. It's just like with the two other members on other matters tonight. I don't think it's up to Wes or the applicant just to agree or disagree, to give you permission to stay.
Who would the conflict be with, if not the applicant?
It would be a violation of the conflict of interest law. You can't entertain or can't sit on a board when the piece of property that at hand abuts. Okay, a member of your family abuts the church.
He's not a direct abutter. And just for the record, we don't have a conflict. We don't have an issue with that, and the applicant does not have an issue with it either. We did check with the applicant, and they don't have an issue with it. But it's...
Okay, but it isn't, Mike, isn't your relative a direct abutter to the church?
To the church, not the lot.
To the church, not this lot.
The lot doesn't exist yet. The lot is still the church. It hasn't been split off. It's proposed to be split off.
Either way, I don't know if we get to a vote and it becomes an issue, then we can, I guess, have that conversation.
Okay. I just don't want commission to be screwed up in the future if something gets decided here And it turns out one of the voting members was really ineligible to vote or participate. Mike, I've been doing this for a while. I think it's pretty clear.
I'll excuse myself, but under duress.
And the other two members that are absent were here at the last meeting, correct? I know the chairwoman was here, and,
Yep.
okay. And so they're able to, if there was another, next
We
meeting,
have
they're...
4.
Yep. If we get to that point, I guess, so. All right, so I will give an update on where we are since the last meeting, and then I know, I'm sure your consultant, Tim, will probably want to talk also, and Matt also, regards to a couple site walks that have happened since the last meeting. So at the last meeting, the couple outstanding items had to do with a site walk. You wanted Tim Smith walk the property just to check the property for any potential wetlands, be it state wetlands or wetlands under your own local bylaw. Tim did have a chance to walk the property. He did reach out to me to let me know he walked the property. He said there was a couple areas that he wanted us to look at. And so at that point, we had Matt Morrow walk the property to take a look at the property or the portions of the property that Tim pointed out. Then Matt, I guess, disagreed with some of the items that Tim was looking at, and so they came to an agreement to walk the property last Thursday. At that time, I believe, Mike, were you there also?
Yep.
And then 4 members were there? There were also some members.
I was, Mark, Dr. Baker.
Ralph.
Yep.
So there wasn't a quorum there?
Correct. It was not.
Okay, I just want to verify that. And so I know at that point, they did have a site walk with the members stated, and Matt and Tim, and in both times that Matt visited the property, he did do some hand augers to check the soils, to see if there are hydric soils on the property. I know Tim, at his initial site walk, stated there was some wetland vegetation that he had some concern about. And so there was some back and forth with that with regards to whether or not there are wetlands on there. We did not update our plan to show any additional wetlands on the property, as our consultant, Mr. Morrow, does not believe there's any further wetlands on the property that affects this project. The other item that we had to take care of since the last meeting was the stormwater management rules and regulations that the city has, and we've been in contact with Nick Erickson, the DPW director, back and forth. I had a lengthy conversation with him this morning to go over, I guess, a disagreement that we had with regards to if we needed to meet those requirements or not, because in one section of the requirement, it says if you disturb less than 20,000 square feet, you do not need to meet the requirement, which we do not disturb greater than 20,000 square feet. There's another section in the regulation that basically gives the city carte blanche over any disturbance in the city that impacts drainage or waterways of the Commonwealth. And so any disturbance that happens in the city, basically there's a provision in that regulation that Nick says that he can require us to do stormwater, even though we don't have 20,000 square feet of disturbance. And so because of that, we updated the plan to what you see up on the screen there, where we show a small stormwater basin in the rear of the property. It's going to be 1 foot in elevation for the greatest storm elevation in there. There's a spillway directed out toward the swale on the property of the church, and then toward the catch basin along the retaining wall to the left of the entrance into the church. And so what Nick asked us to do is run drainage calculations up to a 100-year storm event, which, again, we disagreed with, but we did anyways because there's no way we will get a sign-off if we don't do those calculations, even for a single-family lot. And so we did the 100-year storm event up to the 100-year storm event to show that we don't have an increase in the peak rate of runoff to that catch basin. And so those are the 2 items that were talked about at the last meeting, the 2 items that the updates to this plan and the site walk that you guys had last week, really addresses those 2 main items. We will continue to work with Mr. Erickson to make sure that he's comfortable with our calculations that we're going to provide him to show that we don't have a increase in the rate of runoff to that catch basin adjacent to the entrance. That's at the end of that swale, that drainage swale that was part of the drainage system that was constructed when the church was constructed. And so those are the two items. I'm not sure if at this point we want to turn it over to Tim or Matt to talk about the site walk from last week. I know there's some, I think still some conversation being had there with regards to what was seen on the property and what wants to be protected, even though it's not, even though the soils didn't show being hydric soils. And so I'm not sure, Mike, if we want to turn it over to them now at this point, or if the commission members want to interject.
Tim, you're unmuted, I believe. Both Tim, you and Matt, if you have anything to chime in.
Tim, you can go first.
You there, Tim?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I would like to report. So we did have several conservation commissioners at the site, but they were observing the delineation. They weren't discussing the project. Unfortunately, we were not able to come to a meeting of the minds on the wetland delineation. Matt, and I know Matt's going to speak for himself, but Matt agreed that there is wetland vegetation, but it's Matt's position that there's not the presence of hydric soils. We did look at the soils, and I felt that the soils were not conclusive. It was really there was standing water, and there was frankly a lot of mud, and it's an area where silt has accumulated. And frankly, this area has been not only the soil's been disturbed, but also the vegetation's been disturbed. It's been mowed for quite a while now, and it appears that the wetland area may have been a man-made drainage basin at one point. So because of whenever you have disturbed soils and disturbed vegetation, it's really difficult to delineate the wetlands. But again, there is the presence of wetland vegetation, and even though we didn't observe hydric soils, there's a lot of standing water. And I've been on the site now a few times, and even though and the last time I was on, it hadn't rained for a few days, and again there was flowing standing water. And in fact, there's a catch basin there, so they wouldn't have put a catch basin there if it wasn't a really wet area. And the wetland area it's not even mowed, and I suspect it's not mowed because the mower would sink into the mud. And so we really focused on the area along the John Fitch Highway, parallel to John Fitch Highway. But at the very end of the meeting, we actually, there was an area going up the hill that we followed, a wetland area going up the hill, and we followed it all the way to I'll call it a ditch that goes around the parking lot. And there's actually on the parking lot itself, there was several inches of ice buildup. It's pretty clear that that area is receiving water from above, possibly off of Rinnock Road. But there's a pretty decent flow. Where you do have you have a ditch, and it's quite possible. One of the things Matt pointed out is Matt said, hey, that ditch was probably installed when they built the parking lot. They wanted to drain the water away from the parking lot. That may be the case, but if you look at the definition of a stream in the regulations, it's definitely there are defined banks. There's hydraulic flow. It meets the criteria for an intermittent stream. And if you've got an intermittent stream, then that means that you've got any adjacent wetlands is BVW, bordering vegetative wetland. So it's my recommendation that that area be defined as a wetland, and again, I'm not in agreement with the applicant's consultant on this delineation. I don't know if Matt wants to comment at this point.
Well, I mean, in looking at the area, we did some digging. I know Dr. Baker broke out his spade, and what I still see that we found even under some of the accumulated silt, especially in the areas that were close to the subject lot as shown on the plan, were not hydric soil. We did agree that in the areas where it was going closer to the catch basin, there's a potential it could have turned hydric. It's hard to tell. Area has too much water on it, and it's kind of cloudy as far as getting a good reading in that area because it's street canopy. It'd have to dry out a little more so I could take a look at it. But the area would not reach all the way up and go up the hill. I mean, there is a channel dug in a side of the parking lot that was dug for drainage. The vegetation there, there was some facultative vegetation. It was not there in sufficient amounts. There was just as much upland vegetation like stagcorn sumac, poplar trees. So the vegetation makeup there definitely isn't sufficient. In fact, it would be very incongruent to a wetland. Definition of wetland does allow the applicant to present the soils data to show that the area does not support that type of perennial hydric condition. So my conclusion is that the area immediately adjacent to the lot is definitely not wetland. Downstream, it's still indeterminate because of the amount. However, it is pretty apparent that that area was constructed with the church as a detention area. I mean, if you looked at the parking lot, you would see that there's a lot of water that flows down there. It's coming out of the hillside. It's coming from down the hill. I mean, that area is basically at the bottom of the hill. So that area was graded and made with a catch basin in it to empty water coming off the hillside. Detention basins that were built aren't supposed to be regulatory as wetlands. So that brings another caveat into it. You don't have just as far as the stream definition and the channelized flow, I mean, I understand where Tim is coming from, and yes, that is a clinical definition, but there's a lot more writing on it than just what is in a definition. There are multiple definitions that are created to eliminate this type of confusion, especially the definition of a detention basin. And that area was built to handle stormwater runoff and melt. That's what that area was for. And believe it or not, that was my Reader's Digest version.
Any commission
Can you
member?
guys hear me okay?
Yep. No, we got it.
Yep.
Any commission member want to
Yes,
chime in?
I would like to speak.
There, Ralph.
Can you
Yes,
hear me?
Ralph. Yep, hear you fine.
So I don't disagree with what was said, except that I do feel, as Mr. Smith mentioned, that the ditch, which has had water flowing through it, which lies just to the east of the proposed east lot line of lot number 2, is and should be delineated as an intermittent stream. It's functioning that way hydrologically, and of course hydrology is one of the criteria for what qualifies. So I think it should be delineated as such, and I don't think it would necessarily interfere with the proposal, but it would make the application complete, and if it showed, it will need to show the associated buffer.
Mike, that's a good depiction.
Good, I was guessing. But from
Yeah,
the lot
no, that's
lines,
good.
from the contour lines, you could figure how that was. how it
Yes,
goes.
and it actually goes through Lot 3 where it begins. But that's outside the map that you're showing. It kind of bends around to the left, up above.
So up toward the rear of the
Yeah, I
backyards
mean,
of the houses.
doesn't actually go across the parking lot the way you show. It bends where that
Right.
490 topo line has a bend. That's where it's flowing, and then it goes up.
Yeah, okay, up that way.
Yep.
And just to point out, Ralph said something, Dr. Baker said something interesting. He said he agrees that even if this is a wetland resource area, it doesn't eliminate the ability for the proponent to build a house where they're showing it being built. We may be able to move the house, but I think the real issue here is if the commission says, okay, it's not a resource area, then that was to prevent a homeowner in the future from filling that area in, and then not only have you in every, I think, and Matt agrees, everybody agrees that basin area does provide for the interest of the act, right? It does provide for flood control. It does provide for storm damage prevention. It provides for pollution control. So it serves some of the interests of the act. So that parking lot, for example, that the church uses, it appears to be heavily salted because, again, water does build up there. That salt otherwise would get into the brook across the street and across of John Fish Highway, and to some extent having the water flowing over this naturalized area mitigates that to a certain extent. So also protection of fisheries.
If I can interject for a second here, Tim and Matt, and to kind of back up Matt's point of view. So I have it's a rough copy of the design plan when the church was put in from 1974, and I can give it to Mike, the copy that I have here, that shows that drainage channel that was constructed as part of the drainage to get the drainage around the parking lot, to back up what Matt was saying. And it shows the proposed drainage adjacent to that retaining wall. If you pan a little more to the right, Mike, in that, to the entrance of the church.
Let me get the right arrow here.
Yeah. There's a block wall there, and then also a catch bait or a drop inlet adjacent to that.
Right, next to the driveway.
Yeah,
Okay.
next to the driveway. And this plan shows all of the proposed drainage in that area to go further along with what Mr. Morrow was saying. This was all designed and put in place to handle the stormwater for this property. And so if we were to deem this a wetland, then how do we continue to maintain it as a basin? Because the intent here would be to be able to clean that area out if there's silt, backing up into that drop inlet. And that was actually something that Mr. Erickson and I spoke about today, is that's one thing that he wanted to make sure that, specifically with Lot 2, with regards to the new proposed stormwater basin, is who has the operation and maintenance responsibilities for that, which a Lot 2 homeowner would have. But also he wanted to make sure that the church continued to maintain that drop inlet and that swale so that there's no drainage issues on this property. And the church has no problem to continue to do what they've been doing, which they've been maintaining that area. I did have a chance to talk with a representative from the church today about this area. And years back, they decided to stop mowing this area to leave it as more of a natural area. Where they were mowing it before. I know on the plan we do show an edge of brush where they do mow now, and then everything beyond that is more natural. But you can see there's not a lot of mature growth there, because before they were mowing that area and keeping that maintained. It became too much for them and they stopped maintaining it. And that's why it's kind of grown in the way it has. And they forced the stormwater in that direction. So what I can give Mr. O'Hara the plan, and I can show the other members this plan, but it clearly shows a drainage channel around the parking lot directing the stormwater in that direction. And when Will Thompson Way was put in and John Fitch Highway was when all that work was done there at that intersection, some of this additional swale work was done then too. And that's kind of why we have the work the way it is currently. You know, they culverted that perennial stream at the time underneath Will Thompson Way and John Fitch Highway, put that under there, and then that swale was the remnants of all that construction. And it was part of really the drainage of all that area. And yes, it does receive a fair amount of water, but it's still, I think I looked at it, was 0.02 square miles of an area that goes to this area. So there's water, but it's not anything that's of substance that goes there. But I can show you this plan at least.
Is that the original or a copy?
Copy.
Okay. Good.
I will send an email with a copy. I can
Yeah, sure. Send it to the members. Do any other commission members have a
I
comment?
have a couple of questions for you, Wes.
Is Nick Erickson online?
Yes, yeah.
I'd like to know if his questions and discussions this morning have been satisfied.
I think you're unmuted there, Nick.
We have not sent them over the calculations as of yet. We literally had a conversation. It was like 10 o'clock, maybe 10:30 today. So after I had the conversation with Nick, we've been working, trying to get all those calculations completed. We have got them completed. I just haven't had a chance to put them together in a nice, neat package for him to review. But the plan that we provided you tonight is what we're going to provide him to take care of that issue.
Yep. Thanks, Wes. This is Nick Erickson here for the record. So Wes is correct. We did discuss this morning. You know, we agreed to disagree basically on his stance versus mine regarding the actual applicability of the stormwater rules and regs. My opinion, my stance is that you know, when we crafted the stormwater ordinance and then the accompanying rules and regs document, we added in some language as essentially a catch-all, like Wes described, to allow the city some latitude to address drainage for projects within problem areas. And because this is tributary to the Baker Brook flooding issue that we have down on John Fitch Highway, that's kind of the qualifier in my view for kind of taking this project to this level of detail. So essentially, Wes and I agreed that, you know, they'd proceed with the stormwater design for the site as if the site did meet that 20,000 square foot or more disturbance threshold. I haven't seen the calculations yet. Like Wes said, we talked this morning, and you know, they've been scrambling to get all the information together for this meeting. So once they're able to get everything up, you know, collect it into a tidy package and send it over, I'll take a look through it and definitely send on any comments, questions, or concerns to Wes and his team, and then also to Mike, Tracy, and Tim for their review too. So if there's any other specific questions, happy to answer them. But you know, everything that Wes has conveyed here is the truth.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Joyce, did you have?
Yeah, Wes, I have a couple of questions. When we were there last Thursday, we kind of agreed at that time that the area was maybe not a wetland, but it was called a transitional area, and that there probably should be some demarcation that should be no disturb, even though it's not officially a wetland. And we had asked that the layout of where the placement of the house was going to be, if that would be flagged for us to look at. Do you know, was that relayed to you, or has that been done?
We have not done that, no.
Okay, because we'd like to look at it so that we could kind of actually see if we put this in, where the house is going and where, you know, now we can flag in the detention basin and how much of that lower corner. We've done it in the past. We've put in, you know, markers, whether, I know Matt suggested maybe boulders. We've had people put granite posts in that say it's a no disturb area. But how much we ask for would depend on where the placement of the house is actually planned to go.
Right, and I guess what I said earlier, I'm concerned about making it a no disturb area because it is a drainage structure.
But that wouldn't relate just to the drainage structure. It also goes to the far corner.
That's what I'm talking about. There's a drop inlet there. There's a concrete cover in there. there's a sewer service and a water service that runs through there, but if this was to really be maintained as a swale or as a detention basin, if there's silt buildup in there, we need to get in there and clean it, and we would want to mow it occasionally also, so you don't get bigger growth in that area.
Right. So there really is what we've done with a couple of projects in the past. There's really two different areas that we want to look at.
Yep.
Is there anything that should be considered a no disturb area, which might be in the far bend where John Fitch and Will Thompson Way are? But then there's also a condition that says that the detention basin must be maintained as designed. And so the homeowner or whoever, the landowner would have to do that.
When I say detention, I'm looking at the existing swale that, you see where it says 6 foot diameter concrete cover? I don't know if this is
Yep.
in reach.
Yep.
It doesn't show on the screen.
Yep.
So where Mike's cursor is in that area of the swale leading from basically where we have a road, and maybe even a little more to the left is the area that I think you're talking about that you'd want protected.
No, it's on the other side. It's on Lot 2.
Well, there's a lot more slope to that there. It doesn't really...
So further to the,
Right on the corner of Will Thompson Way and John Fitch Highway. Okay. So beyond the basin, so right there, there's a possibility that some of that could be designated no disturb area, but then there's also the maintenance of the basin. But in order to judge that, we had asked to see the layout of where the house, the placement of where the house would be.
Right. And I guess and I'll be honest, if you asked at the last meeting for us to do that, we would have had it for the site walk last Thursday.
Exactly. But we didn't.
It was relayed to me last Friday that
Right.
That's what you asked for. So obviously it's.
Right. And I have to say, I'm a little bit concerned about agree to disagree with so many things in this plan.
Well, I think
it would be nice to have some consensus, whether it be with the drainage, with whether it's a wetland, with whether it's no disturb.
Well, let me, I guess, we agree to disagree on that if we need to do it or not with regards to the drainage.
Okay.
But since we need a permit signed off by Mr. Erickson, I need to do what he's asking for. So we're going to do it, even though we disagree that we need to do it, and that's what we've done.
But you're also not sure whether or not you agree with it's a wetland or a transitional area, and whether or not we have jurisdiction there either.
That's a completely different story, and that's where I think the biggest issue here is there needs to be some agreement on where the delineation needs to be, and that's where your consultant Tim and our consultant Matt, I think, need to come to an agreement on where that delineation needs to be, and that's where I think Matt has presented a compelling argument that the first area that Michael circled, the lower part near the 6 foot concrete cover, Matt said, yeah, there's some area there that it's fairly wet, it's tough to tell, right? But the other areas where Matt could get a better read of the soil types, Matt feels strongly enough that it's not a wetland because there's not hydric soils.
Okay.
And if it's not a wetland, then I think it goes back to, how does it become, BVW is what Tim's trying to say is it's a stream with BVW, but there's no hydric soils to back that up. And so there's an area of question, but it's not on the property. And it's not going to be determined today, and I'm not sure it's going to be determined within the next 4 or 5 months until things dry up. And even to go beyond that is, when you guys went out there, it was last week, we had some snow, we had some rain, the ground is frozen. Maybe not as frozen it's going to be in, February, but it's frozen. And so you're not getting the runoff, you're not getting the infiltration back into the ground.
Right.
So I think it's unfair to make a determination by you're seeing water flowing on the ground right now, because it's not the time of year to say, well, there's water on the ground. I can go in my yard right now and say there's water on my ground too, after we had all that snow melt and rain. So,
yeah, but there's a catch basin there, right? So we know that there's significant enough flow to have a catch basin installed.
Well, the catch basin,
and you guys agreed that it was part of the storm.
It was part of the stormwater
system.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So
because
say it's not wet.
The stormwater was directed around the parking lot toward this area, and then when the driveway was put in, the driveway cut off the natural flow of path back in 1974 when they constructed this. And so that's why that catch basin, or the drop inlet, was put in there, is to basically that was created into a detention basin, and there had to be a positive outflow there.
Right, and a lot of impervious area was added, right, too. that create in all the addition of the impervious area
We don't disagree with
creates
you.
more runoff and could cause a wetland to be created.
But I think you're making a reach on where the wetland needs to go. If it's going up the swale along the driveway for the parking lot, I think you're making a reach because that was a man-made swale. Then the water was directed that way.
But just because it's a man-made swale doesn't mean it can't meet the criteria for an intermittent stream under the regulations. If you disagree with that, show me the regulations. Show me what the language is.
There are stipulations in the Wetlands Protection Act that allows for maintenance of swales, and that it states right there. It's right in the BVW section of the Wetlands Protection Act regards to stormwater, turning into wetlands, and then and on top of that, Tim, were there hydric soils there? No. So it's not a wetland.
Well, so can we ask Matt that question? Matt, did you look at the soils as you go up the hill and around that parking lot?
Yeah, it's the same thing we found when we were out there. There were no hydric soils up in that area. It's the same thing. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
No,
I
we
heard
heard
you,
you,
Matt.
Matt. We heard you.
Sorry about that. Sorry about the dog.
Oh, that's okay.
So I also have one more question about the new plan where the drainage basin exits onto what's now or going to be church property. There's a bordering line there. How are you dealing with that? Because
Just stone.
you're just dumping water onto somebody else's property, as noted in Mr. Erickson's report.
Yep.
Going forward, if the church doesn't own that, what happens if they, you can't just, it's okay now because the church owns the property, but what if it's not later?
That's part of the operation and maintenance plan. Part of those things are going to be talked about in there. Who has the responsibility for the operation and maintenance of this basin? Who has the operation and maintenance of the swale below that and the drop inlet? And that's some of the stuff that Mr. Erickson did want to be cleared up. And that's we're going to provide him the operation and maintenance part of it. And then as part of an order of conditions, if the commission deems they want to grant one, you can put language in there specifically saying that the operation and maintenance for this basin
Right,
goes to the
would have to
responsibility
be-
of Lot 2.
Yes.
And the operation and the maintenance of the swale below it and the drop inlet goes to the church or its future homeowner or future owner of that property.
Okay.
And so there is ways to handle that within an order of conditions. And the church has no problem with that being a condition of approval, when we get to that point.
Okay.
And so that's where I think a lot of that stuff can be cleared up. I think, like I said, the biggest thing that needs to be agreed upon is the delineation of this wetland or non-wetland or
Right,
intermittent stream or
and
non-intermittent stream.
where it is in relationship to the placement of where the house is going to be.
Correct. If it ends up being delineated, if there's something does get delineated as a wetland or intermittent stream, then we'll have to design around it. If, again, where Matt has provided the soil samples saying that it's not a wetland, then if it's not a wetland, then we will continue with the plan that's drawn here as long as Mr. Erickson is fine with the drainage calculations.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Any
you.
other
Emma.
commissioners have a comment? Ralph or Mary? This is a continued public hearing, and there's at least one name that I recognized. Beth Solomito, who's on Rennick Road. Beth, did you have anything to add or ask?
No, only that they keep saying that the water doesn't come from up above, it doesn't run up above, but it does. There's that stream over there on the top of the parking lot, and then it runs up in parallel and goes up as far as on Will Thompson Way, as far as the Rollo's property.
Okay.
And it was told to us anyway when we bought the house in 1978 that it was considered conservation wetlands. And that there would be no building there, that the church parking lot couldn't extend back there, any of that. But that was all verbal. I don't have anything in writing. So I'm just saying that there has been quite a bit of wildlife in there. The years that they mowed it, it limited the animals and the birds, but now that they've stopped mowing again, the pussy willows have come back, the milkweed has come back. All of the vegetation is starting to come back in that area that was there when we first moved here in '78.
And just to be clear, Will Thompson in Rinnick Road, was that built after the church?
No, yes, after the church.
Okay.
Yeah, the church was there first. I think that was in '74, they said?
74,
Yes.
right. Wes showed us a
Yeah.
plan. I can forward you a copy of it tomorrow.
We bought the house in '78. Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't buy it till '88.
Okay, church first, then Rinnick Road and Will Thompson Way. All right.
But all of us have had water in our cellars. So if you start with me and the house below me, and then the house that's on Rinnock and John Fitch, John and Erin Donnelly own that house. They've had water in the cellars. It's all been there. So, and we've put in drainage system in the cellar. We've done some pumps in the cellar, you know, whatever is needed, but it's not consistently dried up.
Thanks, Beth.
I'm more concerned about the property up above, not the one that's on John Fitch and Will Thompson. However, that's concerning for wetlands and agreed upon transitional lands. But the other lot that they're thinking about, I'd like to see where the property itself, the house itself, is going to be put.
Wes, that might be just wherever it's proposed when it comes time for apply for building
Yeah.
permit.
I
For the
think
further-
they sent
Yes.
something that was attached into this email originally.
So folks know, there was a plan showing two proposed lots to be split. This one that is the concern of the commission tonight, and then another conforming lot further to the north along
Will Thompson Way.
Will Thompson Way, thanks. But that has been submitted to the planning board. It meets the frontage and area requirements, so they're obligated to endorse it, but that hasn't happened as yet.
So I just have one question. Can we, Wes, Nick, Tim, Matt, everybody get together and come up with some kind of consensus that is constructive for us to make determinations as to some agreement for us to go by, rather than everybody has their opinion? It makes a very hard decision for us because we would rather see all of the engineers work out whatever issues each has and come up with a presentation to say, okay, here's the basin, and Nick is okay with that. Here's what might be delineated as a transitional area between Tim and Matt, and present the plan that way for us to approve or deny. Any comment from Tim, Matt, Nick?
Well, it's really Tim and Matt with regards to the wetlands. Like I
Right.
said,
Exactly.
the engineering part of it, we're going to provide Nick what he wants, and as long as he's okay with the calculations, we're going to take care of that part of it.
Okay.
Easier than the other, because it's, wetland science is there's an art to it, I guess, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what typically happens, Joyce, in this situation is either Matt and I could go back out and take another look at it, or the commission could bring in another wetland scientist and get a second opinion. And that the commission has done it in the past, so that's another option.
So where does the commission want to go from here? I think this is going to be continued.
It's going to be continued. Wes, I know. Oh, do we have an audience member, Mike, that would like
I'm
to
sorry.
speak? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So I live across the street on Will Thompson Way from this field,
Oh, Carol?
Karen.
Karen, sorry.
So that field has always been wet. My kids played in the yard, played across the street, always wet. Summer, winter, doesn't matter. There's always been water there. At the bottom of the hill, if you actually look at the cement and look at those basins, when you go back over there, as you can see, there's always water. It always pools at the bottom of the road. Every time there's a storm, there's already drainage problems as it is. My major concern is once he starts digging there, where's that water going? Is it coming back across the street to me? Is it going in the cellar of the church? I don't know. But when our house was built, it cost us $10,000 for drainage. And I had completely dry land there when we bought that property. There was no water. It was already permitted through you at that time when we bought that piece of land. But then they built like 5 houses, whatever, behind us. That brook runs right through the yard, through that culvert. And then you guys claim it goes across the street. I find that hard to believe, but that culvert is on my property. The drainage that I had to put in, as soon as they dug my hole, it filled up with water. Water's going to find its level. Where is it going to go, sir? In people's basements? Beth's already telling you that she has water in her basement.
Water's going to go downhill. And so that's what Nick Erickson.
Downhill, I'm at the bottom of the hill.
No, you're on the other side of the street, so the water's going to go downhill toward the driveway of the church. So the area that is circled in purple is the area that the way the water
You're going to
flows.
guarantee that? So if my dry cellar gets water, who's responsible for that?
This is the part of what we're designing and what part of what Nick Erickson's going to review is our drainage. And that was what he was asking us to provide him with the drainage calculations to make sure there's not an increase to the flow of water toward that catch basin at the intersection of the driveway for the
But what
church.
I'm telling you is it already is a problem.
Yeah, because I know why you do is because you have multiple houses uphill of you and multiple houses out behind you. We're on the other side of the street and at the
I
same
understand
elevation.
that, but I'm telling you, the bottom of Will Thompson Way is a problem.
Yep.
So when you stick another house, you're putting that house on Will Thompson Way, not on John Fitzgerald.
Yep, and the water is pitched toward the driveway of the church. Is what
That's
I'm-
my concern,
what I'm
and it is
telling you.
wetland, as Beth said.
Hey, Wes,
Yep.
was there any borings done? Any soil testing or borings where the detention basin is to see the depth of groundwater?
No, we wouldn't do borings on this type of project. And then the basin is actually shown at the elevation of the existing ground. So no, we did not do any testing.
So the bottom elevation of the basin is the elevation of the
It's for
existing
Yep.
property? Yeah, okay.
Hey, Tim, this is Nick Erickson here. So one of the things that we've done in the past, especially with planning board, is as part of the order of conditions, contractors shall conduct test pits in the location of the proposed stormwater basin to verify groundwater levels. And typically that's something we can kind of keep tabs on through the building permit process, especially now that we've got the online permitting system and all the departments talk very well with each other during project approvals and whatnot. So that's one way to help verify those groundwater elevations and then potentially modify a design to accommodate if anything troublesome is discovered. But the other thing to keep in mind is that depending on whether Wes and his team are accounting for the basin to infiltrate or not, depends on whether these test pits or soil borings are technically required per the Mass Stormwater Handbook. So if they're not accounting for, or if they're not expecting infiltration as part of this basin and it's being used solely as detention, then those test pits probably wouldn't be required. But if they're proposing infiltration as part of their overall stormwater design, then we definitely want to make sure that gets added into the order of conditions, that the contractor or whomever does conduct those test pits prior to construction. And usually we ask that DPW engineering is made available to be present for those test pits.
And we are not including the infiltration in the bottom of the basin as part of our calculations. With it being a sea soil type out there.
But Nick, so if, let's say they were going below the existing grade, if they started excavating and it just filled, the basin just filled up with water because there's a high groundwater table there, then it's really not going to function as designed, right?
Well, if the groundwater is at surface elevation or below, and they're only using that basin for detention purposes, then what you're really concerned about is that volume. So if the basin's constructed and that groundwater breaks out and actually occupies some of that surface volume that's part of the basin and the detention calculations, then that would be problematic. So I think what Wes and his team are trying to do here is they're using the existing ground as and assuming that at that existing grassed elevation, they're not observing any groundwater breakout. So they're assuming that after construction, that detention volume within the basin from existing ground level to the top of berm that they're proposing there is going to be available for that detention volume. And therefore, any groundwater really would be inconsequential. Now, if their design had included infiltration in that area, which is something that we do certainly see, it's, infiltration basins are pretty common for developments like this and commercial developments too, then that would be concerning. We want to make sure that they do the test pits. I think the Mass Stormwater Handbook requires a minimum of, I want to say 2 test pits within the footprint of the area where infiltration is being proposed. And the test pits need to verify the soil, hydrologic soil group type, and they also need to verify depth to groundwater. You need to have at least a 2-foot separation between the bottom of the proposed infiltration basin and the seasonal high groundwater table. But I think that requirement is a moot point if they're only proposing the basin for surface detention.
Thanks, Nick.
So I guess I understand the neighbor's concern because there is that stream running up above the parking lot as well. So that water has to go somewhere, obviously. And I would think that building a house in an already very wet area, even if they are a little bit above or beside, it has the potential to displace water there and also the road. So, I have some major concerns with the amount of wet area, whether we're going to call it wetlands or not, around this project and how this project is going to affect it. And I don't know that I've seen a lot proposed that would take on the water. So that's sort of where my head is at with this.
I think to Mary's point, we probably would, we're going to continue this because we're not in agreement on a lot of issues still to be answered here. We would like to see, now that we've got this new detention basin, that delineated and the house lot so that we can get together for another site visit to put it in actual perspective of where things are going to be, and if it makes sense that by then you'll have calculations for Nick as far as what the stormwater runoff will be, and we'll go from there. Does that make sense, Wes?
Yeah, we can walk the property. And I guess at that point, we could take a look at the swales and I think have a better visualization on where the water does go around that parking lot and to the swale and along John Fitch Highway.
Now, the weather is going to impact some of this, but...
We're not looking to impede those swales, though, because those swales come around away from where we're proposing the side yard and the rear yard. So,
okay. But it's more about what do we delineate as some area, whatever classification it ultimately gets, whether it's drainage or wet, and how do we do that?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And it might be best to have just, if we could post it to all the commissioners there, so we're not coming back at the next meeting and having a disagreement again at the next meeting, because if we have all the commissioners there, at least we can kind of take a straw vote with regards to what should be I guess what you guys feel comfortable as a area of wetlands or not, and take a look at it that way, as long as we don't get a foot of snow between now and then. So
that could impact that right now, but it's been holding up so far.
Right, and I was just going to check the weather now for next week, just so as we can get out there relatively quickly to do we only need 48 hours to post a site walk.
Yep.
Right.
And in the meantime, we're missing 2 members who are out of state, and it would be helpful to have.
And that's what I was right. That's what I was thinking too.
Right, they'll be back next week.
Right.
Yeah.
I think all they need to do is see the so far almost hour's worth of videotape on this item.
Yeah.
And they can participate.
Right.
And vote.
Okay.
I think that'd be the best way to handle this, because with everybody there, at least maybe there would be some kind of agreement or solution on what the delineation is, and then we can design around that if it has to be moved.
So let me suggest this. Give me a ring when that is staked or planned to be staked.
Yep.
And we'll toss around some dates and times to the commission members. And we'll set a date.
Yeah, if we could do it next week,
Post
probably
it.
right before the snow, before we get the next big snowstorm, or probably the best way to do it, so.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
It's going to come eventually, right, so.
So for folks here, the next meeting would be Wednesday, the 1st of February.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, next item. This is, let's get out of this. Notes. See you, Russ.
Mike, I think you'll have to somehow remove your drawing.
Yeah, I know, trying to do, to undo that. Okay. Clear all drawings. Good, okay. Okay, now we're good. Sorry, let me get to the applicable spot, which is, oh, somebody want to get Mike, and where is he, out in the foyer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
he's coming.
Did you recognize Karen?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. I haven't seen her in years. All right.
Want me to get Mike?
I'll go. I'm going to go to the
You should know.
So I'm going to recuse myself from this proposal,
Right.
for which I am the proponent.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing until I get what I'm supposed to get. All right, and go back. There we go. All right. Okay, I'm going to go back to the. Okay, almost there, Ralph. And now let me get to share screen again.
Do you want to vote? Do you want to formally vote to continue that hearing?
Do we,
Because you didn't.
right. Do we- Should we?
I mean, if you want to
Make a
put
motion to continue.
All right, so motion to continue the Will Thompson Way Lot 2 development to February 2nd. Is it February 2nd?
Third.
3rd?
First, Wednesday the 1st.
Oh, Wednesday the 1st, to our February 1st meeting.
Second.
Please. Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
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 Good. Good point, Michael. You're right. Okay. Now, I guess you are up, Ralph. What's best to start off with? This plan that's on?
That's a perfectly good place to start.
Okay.
So this is at 1020 Ashby West Road, where over a year ago I purchased the existing house in 30 acres, and then I obtained a permission from the planning board to cut out the back 25 acres because I want to conserve the land. And in fact, I've arranged for a conservation restriction to be placed on this backland, which North County Land Trust has agreed to accept, but we're working on it, so it hasn't happened yet. In the meantime, I own this property, this 25 acres. I've sold the house in the lower right-hand corner. There's an existing trail, as is shown in this drawing, out on the western edge of the property, which connects. It's not a formal city trail, but it runs through the northern watershed and connects to the Jewel Hill Trail, which is a formal trail. And I intend to have it remain open to the public even after the property is sold, hopefully to the homeowners who bought the house. So we're here today because there's a very small wet area where it says proposed bog bridge. It's about 60 feet long, it's just a bunch of very shallow wet spots that are not connected to each other and don't flow hydraulically, but they're 2 or 3 inches deep, and it would be nice to have a bog bridge there so that the trail is more passable in wet times. So that's what I'm proposing to do. I don't know whether you would need to have a notice of intent on this. That's why it's a request for determination of applicability. I don't believe that it's even within a couple hundred feet of the nearest wetland, but it doesn't appear to be a wetland to me, and nor was it mapped as such when Neil Anderson did a wetlands evaluation of the property for the previous homeowner, though he didn't prepare a report, so I have no report I can provide you. I talked to him about it. Let's see what else can I. If you flip to one of the other figures, Mike.
Well, the sketch of the. You want to go just to the sketch of the bridge?
Yeah, sure. The sketch of the bog bridge design it's very simple, very common type of design. This just shows two sleepers, 6x6 pressure treated sleepers that will be set on the ground, and two 2x10 planks, 8 feet long, that will be set on top of the sleepers, and this will be repeated with the other 8 sets to make a total of about 64 feet of bog bridge, which is what I'm proposing to do there. And
reading from your RDA, Ralph, the narrative, so you don't dig down at all. You just simply place it on top of the existing ground, right?
Correct. It's a common way of building these kinds of bog bridges.
One question I have, honestly, I think we've talked a little bit before about this, but pressure-treated lumber, is that still an issue of, leaching chemicals out into the environment?
It's not believed to be, based on my understanding. This kind of pressure-treated lumber, which is fairly recent recently purchased, it has micronized copper azole in it, which I think is quite stable and is permitted to be in this kind of a direct ground contact application.
Commissioners, you have any comment and questions?
If I could, this is Tim Smith. If I could just quick comment. So there are the regulations 310 CMR does exempt certain minor activities. One such exemption is as follows, and I'm reading right from the regulations. The following minor activities, provide they comply with 310 CMR 10.02 2B1, are not otherwise subject to regulation under Mass General Law, which is the wetland, it's referencing the Wetlands Protection Act. And the first minor activity that it lists is unpaved pedestrian walkways less than 30 inches wide for private use and less than 3 feet wide for public access on conservation property. So there is an exemption for unpaved pedestrian walkways less than 3 feet wide for public access on conservation property. Just want to point that out.
Thanks, Tim. That's good to note.
Thank you, Tim.
Any other comment from commission members?
Nice.
Or
Good.
Mary?
Anything, Mike?
So Ralph's recused. Obviously, so you're down to 4. So is there any comment or a motion?
I think if there isn't, now, and I'm hoping I'm going to phrase this right, and if I'm not, correct me, but if there isn't any additional comment, that I would motion to, for a negative determination for 840 Ashby West Road.
Second.
Should we do roll call or sure? Mr. Christian?
Voice?
You said Joyce?
Yeah, we can do a voice vote, I would imagine is okay. Just about.
Sure, that's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And that's 4.
That's 4.
That's what you need.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ralph.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
So for the record, let's show that Ralph is rejoining
Yes.
the meeting. And 2 other business, which is Tim and Justin. Ridemore heavy-duty truck parts on Benson Street and Battle Street.
Good evening. So just for the record, Justin LeClaire, McCarty Engineering, here tonight with Mr. Timothy Pomelo for the Ridemore on Benson Street. Last time we had spoken, we came to a consensus on leaving the western side of the site where the stream was located and restoring the eastern side on the Battle Street side. We have provided a revised plan showing the changes the commission was looking for, and we did submit a notice of intent to DEP as well as to Mr. O'Hara. We received one comment from DEP along with the DEP file number, and it was just regarding discrepancy in the fees. We've addressed that with Ms. O'Hara tonight, and we'll send out the updated fee to DEP in the morning. Excuse me. The last item from the previous meeting that we had left open was the off-site restoration. I know the commission had multiple ideas. I know Mr. Erickson had thrown out one. So we're hoping tonight we can kind of narrow down what the commission would want to see in regards to that off-site mitigation for leaving the western part. And then that way we can go back and provide some response to the commission on what we would like to do as part of that off-site mitigation.
So can I back up, Justin, for a minute? Mike, we have not seen the restoration plan.
I'm trying to get the restoration plan. No, it was in the revised Dropbox that I just did late this afternoon. So I guess I had seen the restoration plan being submitted, but I guess I had totally missed out that there was a notice of intent, because looking through what the notes I had from last meeting, there was discussion about, okay, do you folks want a notice of intent or just submit a plan under the enforcement order? And I gathered you were comfortable with the latter.
Yes, that they could submit a restoration plan,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we have a notice of intent anyway.
Right.
But you can't act on it, on that, because that wasn't listed as such as a public hearing on tonight's agenda, just a discussion further discussion under the enforcement order.
Right, because in the enforcement order, it said to submit a restoration plan, and so, okay, yep. So we don't have that in our file yet.
Right.
So I guess where I'm going is before we talk about a replication area, we want to make sure that everyone is on board with the restoration plan.
Right. Okay. And so what you're seeing on the screen now is, right, there was 2 options, right? Full restoration, both sides, or partial restoration. Most complete restoration on the Battle Street side, and chime in, Justin, if I'm awry on this. And on the Benson Street side, if you could see the cursor here, moving the bollards, the barriers, back to their original location.
Correct.
Removing the riprap and fill from what was prior the edge of the parking area and what's there currently, and restore that.
The riprap we were going to leave there to
So-
stabilize it.
Yes, so.
Yeah, the Benson Street side, you were going to add the riprap at the far end where it was starting to degrade, move the bin blocks back to where their original location was, and we'll have to look at stabilizing any other areas that need to be addressed. On the Battles Road side, that was full restoration, that was coming out completely.
Correct.
Yes, so if you look at the plan that Mr. O'Hara has up right now, where the 2-story roof canopy is, there's a darker hatch that circles. That's the proposed
riprap is
extension
gonna
of the riprap, yes. The commission had an issue with potential erosion behind there, so we would be proposing to complete the riprap along there, restabilize that part of the slope. We are proposing to move the barriers back to the original position as shown on the existing survey, and then between the relocated barriers and the top of slope, we would loam and seed that area, bring that back to natural vegetation.
How far back is it roughly, Tim, the footage?
Yeah, probably just off the top of my head, 8 feet, because that bank on the other side of the barrier goes back further than where the block actually is. So the block itself probably only needs to come back about 8 feet, but if somebody wanted to walk over there, I'd be more than willing to, show
So
them.
we may stop by to take a look at that, see that we
I'm
agree
in
with
and
that.
out, so I'd like to be there when you're there, and
Okay.
I'd love to meet and show you, and that way if there's something I'm missing, you guys could share your opinion.
Okay.
So just so folks know, Tim, the first building you come to, right, which is 75?
Correct. 150 Benson. The closest one to the rail trail is the one where that
The
is on the back
offices?
of. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So what I tried to kind of shakily outline, is that about the area that's to be restored?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
A
that's
little bit
about the
more than
difference
that, right?
between,
You're saying the area to be restored, on which side are we talking about? That's on the.
yeah, the loam and seed from where the barriers are going to be moved back to the original, to the top of slope.
Right.
That's what would be loam and seeded and restored. So it's about, well, now that Mike's moved it, it's a little different, but
Well, I'll move it back. Whoop.
yeah.
But it's relatively
That's-
close in that
yeah,
area.
Pretty close
So
to
I
that.
think we might want to come and look at that, because I was thinking it was a little bit more than 8 feet, but so let's.
I could be
let's-
wrong a little
let's
bit, but
look at that and agree upon
Sure.
where that demarcation level is, where the bin blocks are
I
going
mean, we
back.
can take a can of paint, mark the ground, and
Yeah,
have the blocks
so you'll
moved
know.
the same day. It's that easy.
Okay.
So one of the other items discussed last meeting that I recall was continue the discussion about what kind of restoration, maybe off-site. You folks have any ideas?
I think last time we left it, the board was going to come together and kind of have some ideas of which direction. I'm more than willing to work with everybody and help resurrect another area that needs it, but I can't be the one to pick that area out. I mean, I certainly know that further down from where I disturbed that area, it does look like that needs some attention down there. And if somebody wanted to do an on-site visit with me, I'd be more than willing to show them that area. I mean, the machine's going to be right there. You know, it doesn't have to be moved, and it is an area you can see that needs to be addressed.
Which area down?
If you go
at the
down-
bottom of Battles Road,
Correct.
where Lemonster came across
Correct.
and did their pipe.
Yes.
I mean, there was no riprap in there. It was, you can see when you go down there. I don't need to go off on it. I mean, I'm not trying to point the hand the other direction, but that to me would seems as though it would make the most sense. But if you guys want to do a different area, I'll work with you.
And I would say, as part of my site visit originally to come out and inspect that, we did drive to the bottom of the hill, and I did make a mention of, well, do you know why this is this way? Because it is not in good shape. So logistically, if the commission's looking to the applicant to restore a site physically and have equipment out there, the logistics of it being at the bottom of the hill from where he is going to be restoring the Battle Street side of his property would make the most sense.
I mean, you're talking about moving a piece of equipment down about 100 feet. So it's that
Do we know who
close
the
to
property
everything.
owner is?
That there, I am not too sure. As far as I know, you have the ambulance company that's right in there, and the city of Fitchburg, and must be Lemonster, owns that section of land right there, because I saw it on a map before. But which one, who owns which, I'm not sure. Because I think it was Lemonster's equipment that was down in there working, if I remember.
They were
right.
working on a water line, yeah.
Yeah.
Replacing water line. Let me find,
So then I'm not sure that that would be a feasible spot, because we technically would be restoring Lemonster.
But is your property on the other side of that where it's still going to affect it?
Yeah, that I don't know. I'd have to look at
Right.
the map.
Lemonster owes us their own restoration, and he could do Fitchburg's. So he doesn't have to do one, but Lemonster owes us. If it's degraded, they owe us.
Right now, I'm not sure that we're ready to make a determination yet, and my recommendation would be, because I think we really need input from our chair and vice chair, who are not here tonight.
Okay.
Beyond that, in the same area where you are, right on the other side by the rail trail, it's a mess in there.
Whereabouts is that? Because I cleaned out a lot of that.
Just as you walked down the rail trail and you look down to where the
People were
culvert and the
dumping
brook.
it in there.
Yes, understandably.
Sure.
But, I don't, we would
Because
need to.
that's such an issue, I mean, I can get guys down there to clean it out, because I've probably taken out 2 40-yard cans full of rubbish throughout that whole stream area. I've cleaned it up numerous times. If I go in there and clean it up, I'm more than willing to do that. And I would also volunteer to put up a fence so it doesn't keep happening. Because this is a continuous thing, and I keep cleaning it up so that way nobody ever points the finger at me saying it's my people putting it over there. So I just assume if we got to put up a fence in that section, people come down the trail, they dump it off. It just never stops.
Understand, yep.
this is the area we're talking about. Here's the rail trail. and there's a
Yeah,
couple-
right at
There's a
the-
little bit of an
So it's-
area right there, and landscapers were pulling up there at one point and just dumping all their landscapings down there.
Yeah, there's logs and tree cut, you can see they're cut
exactly.
pieces of tree.
So you'd be willing to put a fence
I'd be
near where
willing
the
to put some
cursor
kind of
is?
fence in there. I'd have to look
Okay.
at it and get a cost on it. And I mean, as long as you work with me over a reasonable time frame, I'd take care of it. I mean, if you expect me to put it in tomorrow, well, I mean, the ground's freezing, but I mean, if you gave me from now till, middle of summer, yeah, I'm sure I can achieve that.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, I'm going to have to do the same thing on the area we're digging out, because that was another area that everybody was dumping over.
From the Battle Street side?
Yeah, where I made the level area over there,
Yeah.
that was a dumping site right there. People were bringing everything in. So when I leveled that, my original intention for that was to fence that off as well, so people would stop bringing stuff in.
Well, so as you restore that corner, that may be another option
I'm
that
going to
might
have
need
to,
to be
because
added, is
obviously
to
it
fence
keeps
that
coming
off.
back on me
Right.
as the landowner, and if I don't fix the problem,
Right.
who is going to? Because it's been like this for years.
Was there a gate
There was never, there's the property that abuts it, which is CJ's there, that's
Yeah.
fenced in.
Yep.
But that property where I have there was never fenced in, to the best of my knowledge. There's a post sticking out of the ground, which you can see, which is buried.
Yep.
That was always there, so I think at one point there might have been like a chain or something, but since I've owned the property, it was never chained off.
So as part of your restoration of that side, it probably would,
We'd have to see where the grades are, check into it. I'm willing to work with you and look at that. I just need a
Okay.
little bit of time to put the whole thing together. And honestly, this time of year, if it gets cold, we know we're not going to be digging this out till warmer weather hits.
yeah.
The use and access has changed now with the rail trails. So it used to be vehicular access, and that will be no longer.
People are still using that, going down there with dirt bikes and vehicles, just so you know.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a problem with it. They are still doing that. We see it all the time.
Okay, so enforcement of that. I mean, indicate a gate. That's all. Clean it up.
But the gate would be on the Battles Road side, not off the rail trail. That would be the part that's being totally restored so that they don't dump anything else.
He's on his property is on the northerly side of that brook, not on the Battles End side.
The Benson Street side, it comes right back to that corner too, right to that stream.
Yeah, it's up to
But you're on the other side of the stream.
Sorry, I'm on the other side.
Yes, you are.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's, at any rate, I guess.
But here again, I don't mind helping out, because I don't want people to be looking down in there thinking that it was my people plowing or pushing stuff over there. I'd rather put up something if that's going to help a problem than continue to have any problems in the future.
Mike, what we may want to do is, if we're going to get together for a site walk, hopefully with the full commission, to look at the Will Thompson Way area, like maybe on a Saturday morning, that while we're there, can we go and look at the rail trail and the brook, and then by that time, Tracy and Brian will be back.
Yeah,
and
okay.
we could get
It'd be
their
much
input.
more constructive if
also.
we could get everybody there in person
Right.
and do
Right.
it that way.
And we would like Tracy's input as to project.
Yeah. Just so you can see, while we have this up on the screen, so 150 is Ridemore. The adjacent property further downstream, here's that little tributary, is another property altogether. The name just did pop up, but isn't that Zach? Yeah, Zach.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Blanking on the last name. And then that's the cultivation facility here, and this is still city land.
So how come let me ask you something, how come we down on Lemonster
They have an easement through there. At the very end of, right, they have a water connection.
Okay.
That, actually, when the Assistant DPW Commissioner Phil Lemonster was here, 6 months ago? Right, that's the only, one of the water supplies for North Lemonster.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They have an intermunicipal connection. So we can set up the site visit?
We can set up the site visit, so that means that there'll be no determination this evening until we can get some input about a project.
Okay.
And
Could you give me a week's notice possibly, or
Yeah,
not?
I
Because
mean,
I travel in and out of town for business all the time, so I just want to make sure I'm available.
Can we maybe try for either when January 14th or the 21st or something like that on a weekend? Because I know our chairwoman's schedule is better on a weekend, and that's still a couple of
January's
weeks
fine. The
out.
first week of February, I'm going to be out of town for the full week, so
Okay,
anytime.
but we'll
in
try
January
and
is
get to it either the 14th or the 21st,
fine. Okay,
so that we can discuss it at the next meeting.
perfect,
Weather dependent.
Weather dependent, yeah, because now everything's all based on weather.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now,
Justin, you could do that, so you could be there?
I can be there whenever.
Okay.
one item, though, they have a pending order of conditions that's been submitted to DEP?
The notice of intent, you mean?
Notice of intent. I meant.
Yes.
Okay, so don't have a file number yet. Oh, I don't. No, we do have a file.
We do.
number, actually, because I got the email.
Yes.
So when this is continued, which I'm sure it is, and there'll be a motion and second for that, it'll appear as the opening of the hearing on the notice of intent? I mean, I guess how do you,
Yes, so, right, because we have the date window. So, yeah, right now, we're still working off the enforcement order, but if the notice of intent comes in, then we'll work off of that the next meeting,
okay.
which will
enough.
include both.
Yeah,
So if this is the next meeting, I guess a motion to continue to February 1st?
Yes, motion to continue Ridemore enforcement order and notice of intent discussion after site visit till February 1st meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, sorry,
Okay,
aye.
fine. No, you're good, Mary. Thanks for sticking with. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Woodland Estates, and I did see...
Mike, these gentlemen are,
Oh, I'm sorry, 642.
so do we want to do that now while they're here?
Sure.
Unless, do we have people online waiting for?
Well, I know John Barrett is, I saw his name, and Arthur Anderson, but they're sitting in the comfort of their own.
Yeah, okay, so
And I know
while they're
these gentlemen
here.
came up from Worcester, so...
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you to the Commission for your time and for hearing us tonight. I'm James Cunningham. I'm the Managing Director of Cunningham Equities. We're the owners of 642 River Street, Turning Point Campus. We purchased the property approximately a year and a half ago. We were uncertain of the entire scope of environmental remediation, but knowing we need to invest a significant amount of time and monetary resources for asbestos, hazardous material, underground storage tanks, mercury, and other remediation efforts, which by and large today they've been done. We're big believers in know the rules, play by the rules. All our work is overseen by Williamson Environmental, our registered LSP, and since acquiring the property, we've brought it up to compliance with all Mass DEP RTNs. And finally, with the city's recent Mass Bio Platinum rating, we're currently working to transform 642 River Street from the former Fitchburg paper mill into Turning Point Campus for life science manufacturing. Hopefully, this will include a beautiful river walk, and we're hopeful to be in front of you again soon with a full site plan for this transformation. However, we're here because of an incident on or around December 3rd. The incident in question, we don't know exactly what happened, but it occurred on a Saturday afternoon when the only individuals on site were a roofing contractor and his team. We believe he washed his roofing brushes outside of a 100-foot buffer zone of the Nashua River, and some amount of the material, we don't know how much, ran off into the river. At the date of the incident, we were notified by Fitchburg Dispatch. We immediately came to the site during it was raining. It was an active rainstorm. The team on site thought there was a spill from inside of the building. We didn't know what had immediately happened. But upon investigation, all hazardous material has been and continue to be properly stored and secured according to Mass DEP regulations. We immediately called our LSP, who had been on site the day before, and he was able to also confirm that all hazardous material has been and had been properly stored and secured. We walked to the center of our parking lot. We started investigating what else could be causing this incident, and we observed that there was roofing material in respect of runoff from the middle of the parking lot into the Nashua River. We immediately called the roofing contractor, who confirmed his team. He said we had washed our brushes in the parking lot. So we checked the MSDS, the material safety data sheets, on the roofing material. Our LSP contacted Mass DEP. They've had multiple communications, and our LSP believes this to be a non-reportable event. However, we've turned off, so the roofing work is done. We've also turned off all exterior water to the building so that nothing like this can happen again. And we've made minor improvements to the campus. We've controlled and secured all hazardous material on campus, and we're working to design a new campus, again, for life science manufacturing. And at that point in time, we're excited to be back and talk about any work inside of a 200-foot riverfront area, anything within a 100-foot buffer zone. With this property may, hopefully, we believe it does, apply for a mill complex exemption, and we'll be looking at that 100-foot buffer zone. But tonight, any questions about the incident, we're happy to answer, and we're looking forward to working with you moving forward.
So, Mike, before we start discussion with the commission members, prior to our discussion, we need to ratify the issuance of the enforcement order. So, motion to ratify enforcement order issued to 642 River Street for the the discharge.
Can we call it a violation notice?
And, yeah, and the enforcement order and the violation notice.
They're here, I imagine, responding to a violation notice, and an enforcement order does it exist? What is it?
It is. I mean, that's what we sent to them, and so that's what needs to be ratified as far as what we sent out to them requesting their appearance tonight. So,
Motion to ratify.
Yep.
Was someone going to second?
Second.
Thank you.
You may want to call a roll, Mike.
Okay. We'll start with the remote folks. Mr. Baker.
Aye.
Ms. Helene? Give me your...
Sorry. Hi. Aye.
You're good. Thank you. Mr. Christian?
Aye.
Ms. Jacobs?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 5-0.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, further discussion?
Yes.
I guess what else would you like to see, if any, from the Cunninghams?
I guess that, so we assumed when this originally happened that it like washed off the roof, so that was not the case. It didn't wash off the roof. It came from the roofer cleaning their equipment.
Yeah.
Okay.
We should say, we don't know where it came from. There's no stains on the side of our building. I talked to the roofer. He's finished. He went out. There's stains in our parking lot. He said they washed the brushes. They tried to get it done before the rain came. They left. Nobody was there. We don't know.
Okay. And then, of course, the water flowed off the parking lot into the river.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. It appears, Commissioner Christian was there this morning.
I went there today.
So
it appears to be gone completely. I have pictures. It went downstream. We've had so much rain since. So.
Did you notice any residue? Well, you folks are there more in the parking lot?
Nothing. I saw none in the. I didn't see any in the parking lot when it happened, and I have pictures of that. I don't know how much equipment they cleaned. It appears that, I imagine it's big equipment because there was a lot of material. It covered 100+ yards on their side. I could see where it washed over from the parking lot, but now it's been a month. It's completely gone. The water's crystal clear, so it went downstream.
Okay. Other members? Ralph, Mary, do you have anything to comment?
I'd like to speak. Sure.
Please.
I didn't go there right immediately, but I did stop at the property on December 9th. What was the date of the incident?
3rd. Was it Saturday, the 3rd?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I was there a while after, but I saw no evidence of any of that white material. I went down to the riverbank in a couple of places, but it does strike me as odd that this. I mean, from the photographs that were sent to us, it was a pretty large area of white suspended material, or maybe it was some colloidal material that was in the river along that bank, extending downstream right off the photograph. And I don't know, probably covering 200 or 300 feet of the stretch of the river. It seems like it's more likely that rain washed soluble or material that could be washed in through a roof drain that then somehow led to the edge of the river. Then that washing brushes could have led to such a large area. And the reason that I think this is a significant release, despite what the LSP felt, is that when I looked at the MSDS of this material manufactured by Henry 587 Durabright white elastomeric roof coating that Mr. Cunningham provided to us, under ecological information number 12, it listed the component called chlorothalonil, which is apparently quite a potent fungicide. And when I looked that material up, it has clear toxicity and a lot of indications that it's particularly undesirable in aquatic systems and to aquatic species. So anyway, it's all water under the bridge because it's been released, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I disagree with the LSP's view that it was a non-reportable event, given this component, which is clearly not compatible with a water body like the North Nashua River, which we are bound to protect. That's it.
Thank you, Ralph.
So it had not broken up at all. The pictures I have were on December 7th. And on December 7th, there was 100-yard where every nook and cranny of the inner side was still, it hadn't dispersed at all by then. And that was 4 days after the washing of the brushes.
There's nobody here that can determine the volume of the release. But the roofers aren't here and they released it.
The roofers aren't here.
Okay.
But there's a few things I'd like to address. One is, did you look at the price of Henry's roofing material? It's pretty expensive stuff. I believe the roofer, you would say, I don't know how it got in there. When I talked to the roofer when I was on site, he said my guys were cleaning it. It looked like it was in the parking lot. It was raining pretty good. I don't know exactly what happened. However, I do know we own other mill buildings, and we have done a number of dye tests. I'm sure you've seen the dye test where you take a little bit of dye. Over in Clinton, we own a mill building. We took 2 tablets or an ounce of green dye, and we dumped it in a culvert to see where it ended up, and it ended up in the Nashua River. It turned the whole river green. We did it in conjunction with the DPW, but it turned 1 ounce of that turned the entire river in front of on Main Street green. I agree with you. When I took a look at that picture and I saw that white, I said it's unbelievable. I thought it was something in my building or our building that had leaked. It looked unbelievable. However, all of the material that's in our building has been identified by an LSP. It's multiple LSPs. It's secure. It's stored. The roof drains, to the best of my knowledge, they all tie into our floor drains, and our floor drains goes into our pump house. So it's not that area. It's further up. So, maybe they went in there. Maybe they threw buckets of stuff in the Nashua River, which I doubt. But I don't know what happened. So the answer is, I don't know.
So we as Ralph noted, I mean, it's kind of now past, and it appears that it has dissipated, so that's good. There's no residual cleanup. I guess the only thing I would say is with all the work that's going on, Commissioner Christian had pictures of like kind of a half silt fence that's all broken and all of that. For going forward, would it be possible to just put wattles or something along the river basin so if it flows off the parking lot, that can be protected?
Yep. Very reasonable.
Also, I understand there's some discussion about doing a riparian restoration along the shore of the river at your property, and that would be very desirable. So, we look forward to hearing about what those plans might entail in the future.
Right. If the commission members remember, Al Futterman was at a commission meeting several months ago, and he had talked to you, Jeff. Al works for the Watershed Association, and he was proposing tree plantings on several sites, including yours.
Yeah. We met with Al. We met with, I don't know who the other members were, if they're members of the Nashua Watershed Organization or not, but we met them and walked up and down the Nashua River, or the part that we own. We also own land on the other side of Depot Street as well, which I think would be a nice area as well. So we need to design it. But first, we need approval from the planning board, and we need approval from other agencies. We're in the process of, we did a topo we just completed our topo probably about a month ago. There was a lot of work that we had to do on the environmental. And you also know that we had 2 water breaks up there, right?
Oh, on Depot?
On Depot.
Yeah.
So
I remember the detour.
This isn't like, we're actively taking care. I believe we're good stewards of the property. This is something, I have no idea what happened. We own property in Holyoke that was a brownfield that we cleaned up. We worked with Mass DEP. We own property in Clinton that was a brownfield that we cleaned up. We worked with Mass DEP. The LSP that we work with, who said it wasn't a reportable incident, I talked to Mass DEP within an hour of being on that site. They have a 24-hour guy, as you know. And I gave him the information, and the LSP, the 3 of us talked about it, and we gave him as much information as I had. I took pictures of the river. I took pictures of the parking lot, and I shared everything I could with the guy on the weekend. That was the weekend. And then on Monday, I talked to the supervisor. Same thing, gave him all the information. We love the Nashua River. We don't want to hurt the Nashua River. We all want the right thing. I don't know what happened there. It was a boneheaded move by somebody. It's unfortunate.
And we understand that. I mean, accidents happen, and we're very lucky that there doesn't appear to be any residual effect of what's there. But it would be good if you can put some wattles up so that in the future, if somebody else does something crazy, that would protect that area, so that when you do get to develop it, it will still be pristine, and you'll be able to go from there.
Good idea.
It's the simplest thing? Look up S&M Farms. They're in Fitchburg. They could install it, with the same day probably. That's what they do. They provide erosion control equipment.
Yep.
May I suggest, in lieu of a violation of the Wetlands Protection Act and a subsequent $300 fine, that a line item in any work that you do on the shores of the Nashua River, a line item of $300 goes into the shoreline rather than into a fine account.
I'm not
Basically,
sure
we're just waiving, as Mike, we're waiving issuing a fine today, because we could, whether or not it was an accident or not, there still could be a penalty.
Okay.
It's a first violation is $300, but what Mike is proposing is that, the extra $300 is spend it somewhere as far as upgrading the waterfront area, and I'm sure it's going to be more than $300 for what you
A line item of 3. We know that.
Tell us what you did, what you planted, and that'll be fine.
Great idea.
Did I explain that right, Mike?
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
I second it. Good idea.
Don't need to do roll call. Just a voice vote?
Yeah, fine.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming up.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Hey, Mike, before we move on from this topic, could I make a quick comment?
Sure. Jeff, you might want to stick just for a sec. This is the DPW commissioner speaking now. Yeah, Nick.
I just want to speak to the roof drain issue. So one of our employees that works down at the East Wastewater Treatment Plant used to work for the paper mill when it was on operation here. So I can verify what these gentlemen claimed about the roof drains. They do drain down into a pump pit, and that pump sends its discharge up to the old West wastewater treatment plant, where it then flows by gravity into the trunk sewer all the way down to the East plant for treatment. So if there was some sort of contamination here, which it appears by the pictures there was, it most likely originated somewhere in the parking lot, not on the roof.
Thank you, Nick.
To that point, Nick, the city's under a separation order. These factories that have roof drains that go in and the water's treated unnecessarily, at some point in time, will they be addressed and separate their roof drains from domestic sewer?
So that's a great point, and something that we need to address with the current property owner. As has been discussed, that recently changed hands. We've been working with all of the mill owners that are connected to that force main system to separate out the roof runoff from the sewage that's pumped into that system. I think the old Monk's Joe facility is actually the last one remaining that has roof drains connected to that pump system. We recently worked with 431 Westminster Street, Mr. Matt Fournier, and he separated out the roof drains from that pump system and basically closed that off. So it would be great if, Mike, maybe you could send me the contact information for these gentlemen here. Sure. And we can start those discussions. I think there's a very easy way to separate these roof drains from the system that pumps up to the old West plant and into the sanitary system. And the fact that we have Ken Letourneau on staff is extremely helpful because he's very familiar with the system, the setup that's at the old Monk's Joe facility. So we can help with kind of coming up with a conceptual design for removal of the roof drains from that pump system.
Okay, we'll do.
We recognize that issue, and that's part of our plans. That site is also a historic site, so we're also working with the State Historic Commission as well as the National Park Service on the renovation. It's going to take a little bit longer to get approvals, get the final design. But one of those designs, part of the design criteria is to take the roof drains out of the building. So that'll be another discussion once we have more information on stormwater control.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nick. And I think we have.
I did get it. Okay. Sorry.
Mad River, I believe.
I just want to make sure.
That was a thorough explanation of. They addressed it thoroughly.
Yeah. Mike, do you want to do, if John Barrett is online, do we want to do that? And I will recuse myself from that right now.
Last two restoration reports up on the screen anyway. And share. Here we go. And let's see. I did see John. Yep. John, you are here. And also, there were several about.
Can you hear me, Mike?
We hear you very loud and clear, John. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I didn't think I was connected.
No, you are.
Okay.
And right. So the record will show that that Joyce has left because she has a conflict. There are a couple of abutters, Karen Capone and Ms. Haas, so I'll just unmute you, and maybe at the applicable time you can chime in. But John, did you expect Arthur Allen as well?
I did, Mike, and good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there personally, but I thought it best to stay out, having had some exposure to COVID earlier this week. Yeah, Art Allen was going to attend. He was going to attend remotely. He had another Conservation Commission hearing in Oxford his hearing started at 7, and he expected that he would be clear by 7:30. So I just sent him a text to say that we were up, and hopefully he'll join us shortly, because I think he could probably give a better rundown of everything than I can. But if you want, I'll start.
Sure, I think that might be appropriate, rather than just waiting. So I have on the screen, I don't know if you can see it, there was a restoration report from Arthur. Well, actually, that is in late December, and some, describing the work that had been done. You can take it away, John, if you'd like.
Yeah, I think, to try to paraphrase Arthur's report, they had made good progress until about December 15th, and they weren't quite done at that point. I think I'd have to leave it up to him to determine what percentage, right? I thought that they were...
it says here about 80% of the required areas have been cleaned, smoothed, seeded, and mulched.
Yeah, maybe you see it better than I do, Mike. But then, unfortunately, there was... I guess our luck ran out as far as the dry weather we've been having, and we did have a significant rain event on December 23rd. I guess 2.62 inches of rain fell, and that caused some problems. The neighbors did get in touch with us, and we got a hold of Arthur. Arthur went up there right away to inspect the site. In fact, on December 23rd, he was there. And from there, he devised the plan to try to abate or to redirect the flowing water from the neighbors' properties. The abutters had already, I know Mr. Capone had already done some work himself, trying to turn the waters aside from his property, and we appreciate that. But Arthur, in his December 29th report, explains what had happened, and then there is a subsequent report, and I'm not sure if this one shows the. Yeah, I think this one does also show the where the water was going, and you can see the picture, Mike, showing of the standing water there. But Arthur was able to, and certainly Tom DeNuffel was involved in getting our contractor out there right away to do work on the site, and that is reported in Arthur's report dated January 4th, and I think you have that, Mike.
Yeah, I do, and let's get to that.
Mike, So Arthur did not register for the meeting in the requisite amount of time, and so the meeting is actually locked, so he's not going to be able to join.
Oh, okay.
Yep. It is, I will make a note that it is good practice for those who wish to participate remotely to try to register well in advance. But I think the way that the meeting was set up, he was able to register up until an hour after the meeting was scheduled to begin. But because he is not registered, it's now locked and I can't unlock it.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I'll let him know if I could, but.
Well, I have his latest one sent today, John, up on the screen here. So
he wouldn't be able to join by telephone, huh?
I don't know.
If that information is available, he can try, and he might be able to show up as in the attendee section. But
okay, I'll try to let him know.
Well, in the meantime, we can kind of paraphrase what is in the latest restoration report that was dated today. Says no site restoration completed since his last inspection due to ongoing rain events and high water tables. No further restoration work planned until site conditions allow in the spring, next spring. It does reiterate what you had mentioned earlier, John. He met with some neighbors following the 2.6-inch rain event a few weeks ago.
Right.
Oh, and there's photographs. No, not photographs, but just a sketch showing how some swales had been created to divert runoff to wetlands.
Right. So I think that, the report of January 4th, which is today, right?
Right.
He's bringing us right up to date as far as what's happened. He says that the contractor did discuss temporary diversion work. The sketch depicts the runoff, and the photos of the completed work were attached. That work was completed outside the wetlands and buffers. Then there was rain again last night into this morning, but he says no runoff was observed flowing towards the concerned abutters. So I think that's essentially all I can present, Mike and members of the commission, as far as the situation there at Ashburnham Street. I do want to say that, Mad River has been, I think, trying very hard to deal with the problems there that were, quite frankly, caused by the owner, again, Mr. DeNouvel's father, but unfortunately there was that bad mix-up as far as the father, Mr. John DeNouvel, didn't, certainly he didn't expect the logger to do what he did, quite frankly, but I'm not trying to go back in time, but I just want to stress the fact that Mad River didn't, I guess, cause this, but it's trying very hard to correct the problem.
There are a couple of abutters who registered, and I believe you are both unmuted, both Ms. Capone and Haas. Do you have anything to add or questions? Hearing none, I guess. Any other comment from, yes, Michael?
Well, it would be nice to have somebody articulate the reports. I don't have the reports, and I can read, so I didn't necessarily need him.
Okay.
And the Dropbox is empty. The Dropbox is deleted. So I can read everything that John was unable to deliver today, if I had it, and that's one point. And then secondly, two things. At some point in time, I suspect somebody's going to look to begin installing footings and solar arrays. And item 13 on the order of conditions says that the drainage system shall be substantially completed, and that is built to the approved design. And so before any talk of installing galvanized or aluminum or concrete stands for the solar arrays, the Conservation Commission will be looking for that for sure. And then I just wanted to clarify number 14 of the order of conditions, that a bond has been purchased and exists for the project. Can somebody confirm that for me? I believe Mr. Erickson was going to come up with the amount.
I have not come up that amount yet.
Okay.
Donnelly.
Okay, can we put a, I'm not pushing you, but can we put a deadline? I'll throw a number out there and put a deadline on it. If we can't, if we have to shoot from the hip and get a deadline on that. Can we do that?
Yeah, that's fine. I think if I have a deadline to work with, I'll get it done.
Okay, last week, would that work?
If it's open.
Sorry, Eric.
Competing priorities, you know?
Yeah, I get it. It wasn't your job. I think we pawned it off on you. If the commission could come up with a number, as absurd as it might be, it's a number, rather than delay.
Well, John, if I could ask you, how imminent is the start of construction on the solar array? I mean, are there any concrete?
I think the construction of the solar array, Mike, is probably quite a ways off yet. Certainly, I think, you know, the remaining restoration work, remediation work, I think, has to be somewhat postponed until we get drier weather again, as I understand Arthur's report. Certainly, that stuff will have to be fixed, and I want to assure Mike Donnelly that that will be dealt with before we start the solar construction.
Yeah. Well, number 13, I had no problem. I was just bringing it to your attention that we're looking forward to that. That was number 13, and we jumped back again. Number 14 was about the bond. So I'm satisfied with 13 because it's in our control. But 14 right now hasn't been addressed, and I'm looking for a dollar amount and a time, and I look to my Conservation Commission members to chime in.
If I could make a suggestion, just to make bold the idea and to maybe save Nick some work, has the commission had a similar type of project where a bond was set that could be compared to this?
Thank you. Thank you, John. I can't answer. Someone else?
I'd have to check. Well, because there's been several, as you know, projects that have already been built here. Off the top of my head, I can't recall. We could check, though, whether the commission imposed a bond or whether the planning board.
Ashburnham Street had a bond, our last one. He came in, he wanted to back lickety split. Too small. Apples and oranges. Someone came in, they wanted their bond, they want to get out of here.
Yeah, that's...
Across from McKay School, and that was a long time ago, and the site is much smaller, we had a $20,000 bond.
Right, and 25 years ago, too, right?
Yeah.
On the hill.
More.
And we actually ended up utilizing that, and it was probably inadequate, even back then.
Mike, to your point, I am happy to prepare the bond amount. I just need to have a hard deadline and put it in the calendar, and I'll get it done. If we say that next meeting is that date, I'll get it done. I don't think that date was conveyed during the last meeting, so that's why it hasn't been done yet.
Very good. Could we ask for you to provide us a bond amount 30 days from now, February 1, and we'll present that to the applicant on that date?
Yes, that's perfectly acceptable. I will make a note of that right now, and we'll get it done.
Much appreciated.
Put it in the calendar while we're talking.
Now, Dan had mentioned that there was a hand raised. Frankly, I'm not seeing a hand raised, but if either the abutters, Catherine or Karen, have something to add, I believe you are both unmuted. Dan, who had the hand raised?
D&J Garcia.
Oh, I didn't. Okay.
They just lowered it. They just put it back up.
Okay. Help me out a little bit, Dan. I don't see that name here.
The purple D. I'll talk on this end.
Thank you.
They're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I don't know why I registered in time, and so we are the new owners of 660 Ashburnham Street, and Art lives about 3 houses up from us, I think, 2 or 3, and he had come down to let us know about what was going up right at the top of our hill where our house is. We hadn't experienced any issues until the most recent rainstorm, and my yard became a pool. I have video of all the rain that came into our yard that was coming down from the hill that it looks like the previous owner maybe had, or I'm not actually sure who, had made like a little tributary so that it could run off to the side of the yard, but that actually became full and created all this water in my side yard, next to my well, in the backyard, and then my basement became flooded, so much so that the drainage downstairs couldn't handle it. The front of the yard had water running over the side walls. My yard was a mud, and it just was, we had not expected it. I do have the video of the running. It was definitely coming down from the hill I'm not really sure where it came from the top of the hill because I was afraid to walk up the hill, but it was coming down from the hill into my yard. So it had maybe created its own path. So I'm not really sure since we've lived here since August, we actually haven't seen anybody up there except for maybe one time. We did see a couple of people standing up there looking around, but they weren't doing anything. So I'm not sure at what point in time they have been doing the work up there, but we haven't seen it.
Well, the tree clearing was done a couple of winters ago now, right? Yeah. So.
Right.
Okay, I just don't know. Like I said, we're new owners. We're new to the situation. I only know what I know, and I'm only telling you what happened to us most recently.
Okay. So I guess, John, maybe a question. We get the gist of the discussion tonight is restoration work is stopped for the winter until springtime when things warm up. But if in the meantime there's additional storm events, snow melt, et cetera, and we have another situation like we did on December 23rd, what's the response to that?
Well, hopefully, Mike, if I might, Adam, or I'm not sure I'd address the chair. I'm not sure. I know Tracy's not here tonight, and I'm not sure the chair, but maybe.
No, they elected me, John.
You're elected, okay.
Stuck with me.
I think that what I believe Arthur's report suggests, at least, is that with the runoff diversion work, hopefully there will not be a repeat of what happened to, is it Mrs. Garcia's?
Yeah, it's Deborah Garcia. Deborah and Julio Garcia.
And I would, if I could, through Mike and the commission, Deborah, get your information and your phone number. I can hopefully be in touch with you too for any things. But in terms of what was happening, as you may not be aware, but things were basically in a hiatus there through the summer. The decisions were issued in about the middle of October, and then work began shortly after that. But the work was the restoration work, not so much the type of, I guess, runoff diversion work that would have attended the construction of the the solar facilities there. I'm not sure exactly how the two need to, I think, have to be done in concert. Certainly, before any erection of any solar facilities is going to happen, the other diversion work would have to be done according to the plan. But I think what was going on mostly this fall was the remediation work as far as the effects on the wetlands. And obviously, this heavy rain event did point up the fact that the other work needs to be done. And if Arthur was here, he could maybe address the more pointed question. If we get another 2.5 inches of rain, has the work that's been done, will it prevent what happened to you a couple weeks ago? Hopefully it will, but I can only go by his report, which it appears that it should. You know, that the diversion work, including excavation of swales, creation of earthen berms, was completed on January 3rd, and the sketch depicts the observed runoff in red as well as a new course of flow in blue.
Well, that's happening in the back of my house? I'm sorry, John. That's happening in the back of my house? Because
yes.
I'm not exactly sure where that's happening. I mean,
I don't know, Mike, if you have the map on.
Yeah, let me get that up here.
Report, and if I could make sure I know where Deborah's house is it formerly George Minkenden's house?
That was not the owner that we bought it from, but we are.
Sorry to bump in, but yes, that's the correct house.
It is. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Someone with his institutional memory.
So it's this one right here, right?
Right where the red arrow is pointing.
Yeah.
I see Art's house, and then the people next door to us.
Lefebvre, and then
haven't met yet.
this, right.
And then that is my.
Lefebvre is now Haas.
Gotcha.
So this is an
Thank you,
old
Karen.
map.
Karen.
And where's Haas now? Is that Lefebvre?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So this is showing the red. This is all coming down. The runoff is all coming down into my upper level of my yard and then down into the lower level of my yard. And my well is actually right over, right in the middle of all of that. And just the other day, we changed the filter to our water filtration system, and I'm not sure that this caused it, but there was a lot of sediment and sand in my filter, which it didn't have all that the last time we changed it when we moved in.
Well, John, let me ask if there's still time to do work out there, if that's possible. Maybe another diversion. I don't know if you could see my cursor, but a diversion swale, like down toward this wetland? Further to the east? Southeast?
Right. I would have to say, Mike, since they were able to go in there, in this past week, even though no remediation work would probably take place, that they could go in there again and do further creation of swales or earthen berms that would divert the water away from that area where you're drawing and pointing it down towards that other hopeful area that will absorb it, not cause further problems for the people down that way.
Okay. Can you contact Arthur to see if that's possible?
I will. Okay. If you want.
Yeah. I think we need to be careful here. You don't want to divert the water, and it relieves the issue for one neighbor but causes a problem for another neighbor.
Exactly.
True.
Yeah. So what we really want to do is slow down the flow so that the water has more time to permeate into the ground.
Right.
If anything, almost like a stilling basin or something like that, or there's different things we can look at. You can look just based on the contours. though, the water has always gone that way. It's just that now that you've taken all the the trees down, there's a whole lot more water. But it's always gone in that direction. But now that there's more water, it's a problem. So we really need to slow it down, and we need to be careful about not diverting the water on and just causing a problem for another neighbor. So it's something that we should, that look at and get a proposal, and then look at that proposal carefully.
Okay, I can relay that to Alan, and I think try to get a supplemental report given Deborah's sad tale of what she's experienced, and see if we can get some clarification about that. I know he's got the red lines there, and I'm presupposing that his blue lines indicate now which way it's going to go. So I don't know if that means they've created swales and or diversions so that it's going to go off that way towards the other land owned by. Okay, now I've got Arthur calling me back, so maybe I can patch him in.
Oh, okay.
Arthur. Hi. Okay. I'm on the. I don't know. Let's see. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do this with the speaker. I'm on the hearing. I'm in the hearing now. Are you in the car?
Yes.
Okay. The question has come up from one of the abutters, Deborah Garcia, who lives, if you remember where your red arrow is on the plan, she had experienced a lot of runoff into her yard. Her yard turned into a pool. She had flooding in her basement after the 2.5-inch rain incident. And the question is whether or not the work that's just been completed will help to prevent that from happening again if we get another 2.5 inches.
Do you know what her address is?
660 Ashburnham.
What is it? 660.
Yep.
660 Ashburnham.
Right. So that central swale that we created, that was designed to help with the issue at 660 and 680.
Okay. I just want to make sure you know, I've got you on the speakerphone, so we're at the hearing with the abutters and the commission. So, okay. All right. So that diversion or swale isn't actually represented on the plan, is it?
No, that's the blue arrow, John.
Line that runs perpendicular.
Okay.
The blue line is the new swale we created in the upper part of the site.
Okay.
But
so do you believe, I mean, the thing that's a little disconcerting is that the red arrows are going around those blue ones. So does that suggest that there's still going to be rain coming down and going into 660 or?
Well, there's still a swale there, but we diverted the water higher up in the site away from that swale that caused the problems at 660, 680, and 696. We created two different swales to address the problems at those three properties.
Okay.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying.
Tim, could you hear that?
Yeah, so it's the newly installed swales are intercepting the flow and carrying the flow away from the residential homes.
I guess the question is it doing enough in order to divert from this red arrow here, which is going directly at the Garcia's property?
Yeah, I think some of the concern is that given that where the red arrows are and where the blue arrows are, it creates the impression that water is still going to be coming down where the red arrows are and not sort of hitting the blue arrows and being diverted. So I think it's something that if you could take a look at it and get back to us to verify, because I think what you're saying, what I hear you saying is that those swales are going to take the runoff that's indicated from the red arrows away from 660, 680, and 696.
Yes, that's what we did. That's what we did on the ground. If you go out there and look at it, you can see the new swales that we created, and they're designed to take water away from those red flow paths that caused the problems in the last big storm.
Okay.
Well,
Okay,
John,
so-
let me, in the interest of time here, let me suggest, Arthur, if you want to contact me, and if the next time you go out there, give me a ring and I'll meet you. And Deborah, if you're still there, I have your email address since you used it to sign up for the meeting. I'll send you a note, and we can exchange numbers, okay? And maybe it could be.
Can I visit with Mike? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah. Unfortunately, my speakers are not that good. I can hear it, but I don't know if you can. Art. Yeah. Mike's asking.
Coordinate a site visit with Mike, yes.
Okay, good. Do other commissioners have any comment? In person or virtually?
I just don't want to use weather as a rationale for any slowdown of work. Perhaps rain, yes, but weather in general, whether January 4th. The other day, Amazon will put in multiple dozens of foundation plantings. I was surprised as heck, but by hand, with a pointed shovel, they were installing multiple dozens of foundation plantings. And so the work that's up there, there's plenty of time without any snow cover, and to get plenty of work done and to take care of that drainage issue.
This is Ralph. I would add that drawing that we were looking at is really inadequate. They need to provide a much clearer presentation of what they've done, please.
All right. Ralph, we'll try to see if we can get something more detailed. Art, do you think that's possible? Or
Sure. Thank you.
I mean, I'm a wetland scientist. I'm not a surveyor. I mean, I went out there and made an effort to solve a problem that was created by the property owner. I mean, I could approach the property owner and see if he wants to have what we did surveyed, but that's about the only way I could do something more,
right,
more specific, more accurate.
Understood. I think sometimes we forget exactly what each of us can do. So that's a good point. That's something more in the department of a surveyor, as far as
right. To have a surveyor run, let's say, 1 foot topo in that area would enable us to see what has actually been done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we can ask him about getting that done.
Okay, commissioners, any more discussion about this, or can we just put this on the next agenda then, John, and just give a brief update, if not a full, report like Arthur had done?
I will relay I think we need to get back as far as the bond, and I'll relay Mike's Donnelly's comments about, I think that what he was saying is that notwithstanding the date, if the weather and everything is such that work can be done, we should be doing work.
Right. Motion to continue?
Motion to continue.
Thank you, Michael.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, John. And
all right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone.
And neighbors.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
And what else do we have? Okay, so should know Joyce has rejoined the meeting. And moving on to, if we can get out of, well, anyway, we had Woodland Estates, and I did see Joanne's, I thought I saw Joanne's participants. Yes, you're still here, Joanne. And Mr. Christian has recused himself. Yes. Okay, Joanne, you are unmuted. I see your hand up. You still there?
Can you hear me?
Yep, now we can.
You wanted an update about the detention pond, and it's been completed. I mean, and what kind of update? You wanted an update, but I don't know if you want like what you're looking for.
Commissioners, you want to?
I have a comment that Mr. O'Hara and I, this is Joyce Jacobs, were at the site last week. And when we say completed, it's hard to tell because there was a bit of a snow coating, that a couple images of snow that was still on there. But is it functioning as intended? What drainage is hooked into it? I see that the excavator was still there. So if you could elaborate a little bit more than just completed, that would be helpful.
Well, the detention pond is completed. I think we reported that last time, that everything's up and working. The swale's been installed. Everything it's functioning the way it's supposed to. And I don't believe there's an excavator down there. I think they're all up top. But they might have been moved after you were there the last time. I don't know.
Tie-ins?
Yeah, do you know when all the tie-ins from the full site are going to be completed, or are they?
As soon as the building commissioner removes the cease and desist order. I can tell you this year we've installed 8 new homes, and we have 3 homes waiting for building permits that are already under agreement. We have 41 homes installed to date, leaving 13 homes remaining to be built. We've also installed 200 feet of water storage and drainage lines, which included 3 drain manholes, 3 sewer drain manholes, 2 detention catch basins with laterals to the new homes. Utilities are stubbed off to the street to house the additional homes in that section that we've been working on. We've installed 2 electrical gang boxes to house up to 18 homes, along with 2 new utility poles, including electric cable and street lighting. Completed the detention pond and wetland replication area as requested. Added secured mailbox system and completed the outside recreation area with pavilion, bocce, and horseshoe. Pre-ordered and paid for additional electric gang boxes and over 5,000 linear feet of PVC pipe with connectors in order to beat potential material or supply chain shortages and to reduce any uncontrollable issues with not being able to complete the project by the time frame that you guys have outlined for me. We had planned to finish removing material, including the stump pile that's in the back of the property. And then our goal was to be blasting with our blasting company at this time to finish the final section that needs to be blasted so that we could continue to put in the additional utilities. But unfortunately, we were issued a cease and desist order, and unfortunately, this has greatly affected our timeline.
As I understand it, the cease and desist order did not include ceasing work on the detention basin. So
the detention basin's complete.
Okay. Mike, was that your impression when you look
I
at
think you
it?
still need vegetation to really take
That was
hold.
30 days ago, maybe 60 days ago. That was substantially complete. It looked good, and we were waiting for vegetation. Yeah, it was all graded, and it was in good shape.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that won't happen till spring. But it has
Sure,
all been
understood.
seeded.
Yeah.
Some of the grass had started growing in the back, but then we had snow, so.
Is any portion of the expansion of the park connected to the detention basin?
Oh, yeah.
So would you say on the cul-de-sac at the end, 1 or 2 or 3 drains They are not connected yet?
We have not made it to the final section because of the ceased order. We do have 2 drains that were installed that you folks had asked me to put in, God, I can think of a silt fence, vapor, what the hell is it called? I don't know, some kind of, I can't think of the word at this moment, but like not Marafi paper, but something like that on the 2 drains in the back, and you wanted me to put hay bales, but we really can't put hay bales right now because one of the drains is right in the middle of like one of the driveways and the other one's kind of in the middle of the road, and it would be impossible to plow. I was going to propose that we just put plates over them, but we do have the silk fabric in the 2 final drain basins that we did install before we had to stop.
Yeah, like silt sack. It's sort of like.
That's it. I'm sorry, I just couldn't think of the word right.
No, we got you. Okay, any other comments or from either Mary or Ralph at home?
I was hoping to have 2 more homes in there, but unfortunately we didn't get them put in. But hopefully we'll be able to put them in shortly. My goal is to finish the project by the timeline you set, but now this is really going to screw us up, I have to tell you.
Any other action to the commission? Okay. Well, thanks, Joanne, for the update.
You're welcome.
Okay. Moving on, you had several items under violations and enforcement orders.
Do we want to do 46 Sheldon first?
Sure.
Okay. Update to the commissioners in attendance. 46 Sheldon, the Adams violation. Mike and I have been working on, mostly Mike, because he got most of the enforcement orders out as requested by DEP, that we tried 2 more times to contact him. All of that is coming back as returned undeliverable, so we have not been able to make contact with Mr. Adams. Mike did get, we sent it to his lawyer that worked on the closings for the sale of the previous lots. The lawyer got the information and returned a message to Mike that said he's no longer representing Mr. Adams and isn't involved in any way. But so we're lighting a fire under someone, but just not the right person yet. But anyway, so we have now exhausted everything that I believe that the Fitchburg Conservation Commission can do. And the next step, if this commission agrees, will be to vote on turning this violation over to Mass DEP. What that will entail, they have asked that we recreate a timeline, so I'll work with Mike to come into the office, go through the folder one day, make copies, put the timeline together from when the violation happened up through our final documentation that we've been trying to get in touch with Mr. Adams, and revert the violation over to Mass DEP. I will tell you that Commissioner Donnelly spoke to Mia McDonald, who has been our contact at Mass DEP, and their first intent, they will hunt him down wherever Mr. Adams is, and advise him that it would behoove him to contact the commission first before Mass DEP takes action. So we may yet, if they do make contact with him, hear from him. No one is actually assuming that that's what's going to happen, but that's how Mass DEP works, and then they will pursue actions against him. So if anybody has any questions, we can discuss it. If not, I would be prepared to make a motion to transfer this violation to Mass DEP. Ralph, Mary, any indication that, any questions?
No, I would second that motion if others don't object.
Mike?
I'll comment after we continue with the motion. I'll second it, yeah.
Mary, any questions?
No, thank you for explaining all that.
Okay. So I move that we make a motion that we complete the paperwork requested, that we fill out, create the timeline for Mass DEP, and turn the file and this violation over to them to pursue.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's fine.
If I may comment on that.
Yeah?
Conservation Commission members need to be ready to address at a meeting the violator and what we want out of what performance we're looking for. We need to be able to address it when we get them. So you got to think hard, and if it's not coming from us, then we need an individual to advise us as to what we should be asking for from the violator.
If he comes back and contacts us?
Right.
Wouldn't that be full restoration of what he did?
That's easy. That's about 5 words. I think we probably ought to have a more detailed demand.
Well, we could elaborate that, yeah.
We'll only give it some thought. We may come to that night, and we had best be ready, or all of your work is somewhat for naught.
Michael, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Mr. Smith already prepare a pretty thorough description of what the violation entailed and what would need to be done to correct it?
Well, engineered plans are...
No, but I mean...
they'd be significant to our request.
But wouldn't we, as Ralph says, well, I'll go back through the folder, Ralph, and see what I find out in that case, and then he would have to, here's what we want it engineered to back to that state, but he would be, Mr. Adams would be responsible for doing the engineering work.
He'll do only what we ask him or demand, so we need to be specific about what our demands are. That's all.
Okay.
He won't do any more than we ask. We want to make sure we ask for it all. I understand, Ralph, that, Tim went to work for us, and we have to use that. We paid for it, let's use it. But we got to be explicit.
All right, so I'll compile the stuff that's got to go to Mass DEP, and Ralph, then I'll see what is in the file previously, and we can review that maybe at the next meeting and see if that is sufficient detail to instruct Mr. Adams should he contact us with what we want.
Yeah, so if this is Tim commenting. So one of the things that we're going to need to do is there is some filled in BVW, and we don't know the extent of the filling because there's soil on top of the wetlands, right? So we can't see the vegetation. We can't see if the native soils to see if they're hydric soils. So we're going to have a wetland scientist do some not really test bits, but dig up some of the fill and sample dig up the fill till they get to the native soils, and then sample those native soils for the presence of hydric soils to determine the extent of the wetland filling. And then once we know the extent of the wetland filling, we can better come up with a restoration plan.
So should our first request maybe be that he puts a bond in place that we can use for these kind of expenditures that are going to need to be done to create the restoration plan?
Well, we've got that. I brought it up. We've got 30 days to know what we want, and we want him to pay for our wetland scientist to determine the extent of the filling. Right.
Okay.
These are the things that we need to do in the next 30. Well, we need to do.
Well, 30 days, the file will just be going to Mass DEP. How long it will take them before they turn it over and start, I don't know how long it's going to take their attorneys to find him, but, okay.
I would ask Tim. I mean, you could do it. Tim, you know what you provided us. Well, we can take another look at it. If we can get really specific and detailed and elaborate on your initial findings, so that we ask for it all and don't, not a multiple hoops in front of them, all of them in front of them immediately.
All right, so we'll get the paperwork ready to go to DEP and then pull out Tim's previous recommendations and see if we need to elaborate on that
There you go.
anymore.
Yep.
Okay. Next up,
Moving on,
Mike.
next one is 291 Westminster Street. And so you folks know, a couple of weeks ago, that's a copy of the $600 check that was submitted.
Yep.
Dropped off in person by someone from Whitman and Bingham. Jamie Rowe had said that there will be a notice of intent, not submitted for tonight, but
He asked for
shooting
February last time when we were here.
Haven't
Yep.
seen that as of yet, but
Okay.
There's still time.
Okay.
So that's that one. Oh, and 170 on Farm.
All right, so the
Next one.
The next one is 170 Arnhow Farm Road.
Noted that Mark has left the meeting for that item.
Okay. So the question becomes, there's a new owner. The deed was transferred in October 20th to be exact. And do we wish to pursue, because now the 3-year window is open on the sale of the property, because, and I'm getting caught up on this because I wasn't that involved. I know a little bit about the Slocum issue, but are we open to pursue anything with that violation, or where do we want to go with that, if at all? Just putting that out there.
He's alone.
No, I think we still have.
Mary is equal a butter.
Oh, right. Good point.
Just if we're going to do it for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, so I'm recusing myself from this, so.
Okay. Noted.
Consider.
Got it.
Okay?
Thank you. Thanks for mentioning that, Mike.
So what is the feeling for, do we continue to pursue the violation, or it's always the hard decision of, do you go after, I know legally we can, do we go after the new owners?
You know, technically, with Mark and Mary out, you're down to 3.
Yes, so we can't vote on anything tonight.
Yeah.
But we can discuss it, right? And
Can you deliberate on an
With 3?
item?
Yeah, without a quorum, sure we can. That's what we can do, is deliberate without a
Right,
quorum.
but we won't be able to vote because we don't have.
Okay.
I know.
Well,
Noting.
Okay.
let's not put ourselves in this position again, right? That action will eliminate it. It's a tough call, but I'm thinking if we do the right thing and pursue it, and pursuing it would be bring back any fill that's in the wetland. And I suspect that there are wetlands that Mary Ann DePinto did not find in her drilling. And we request the new owner to do that or hold them accountable. Now, the sensitive thing is we go after a new owner who's somewhat innocent, but the reality is her burden is to go after the former owner and not blame us. So that's the reality is if we want compliance, we get it from the landowner, and if they feel it's not just, that they pursue them. Now, the only way that would be fair is if we have that violation notice and the real estate agent was made aware of it. See, they have recourse, whether it be the agent or whether it be the owner, they can go after it. So we don't have to be so sensitive about going after the current owner.
So Mike, what was done originally on that? Were there violation notices issued? So Mr. Slocum was well aware that there was a problem.
Oh, yeah.
So when
The reason he filed.
did his, what do they call that paperwork that says when you fill out, do you have lead paint? Do you have this? Do you have that? Your disclosure form for sale.
Right.
If there's always a line in there that says, are there any pending actions and that? I mean, if they didn't disclose that when they sold it, you're right, the new owners would have recourse.
And they do, because I know that the real estate agent was informed, because I informed them. And I have that. And Slocum knew. So the owner knew. So they have recourse, and it's not with us.
It's with Slocum.
It's with another party.
Yeah.
So the burden now is on them, and we don't have to carry that burden. All we have to do is do our job. And our job is to remove fill that's in a wetland and or that violated the wetland. So, Mike, it begs the question, were we satisfied? What were the shortcomings of Mary Ann DePinto's findings? Did she not get back to us? I believe that
report. Yeah, I'd have to check.
She came forward and we sat down and we talked, and she said she was going to do this. I'm just wondering, I think filling continued after that. I know that it did because I observed it. After her report to the commission, I know that there were several piles of gravel put there after the fact. And I know that there was more wood chips put there, not up against the wetland. On the rear wetland, we hardly even looked at, where they were going to build their pond. So I think the violation was continued filling after notice was given.
Well, now, go ahead, Ralph, please.
Well, I don't know if everyone on the commission is aware of this, but the time that we visited the site and looked at it from the
high school
parking lot, we observed somebody dumping where Michael just described.
Well, I traveled that route, and I saw what happened long before coming to the commission and what happened after it was addressed by the owner and their representative. I know that there were violations beyond that. I just wanted to make sure that we had documentation here following documentation that they were requested to come in and or that they continued in violation of the Wetlands Protection Act. And if we have that, then we can pursue the current owner. If we don't have that, then we don't have much of a leg to stand on with the current owner.
So, Mike, that's another one. When I come in, if we pull that folder, we can just go through and see if we can meet the documentation. Commissioner Christian and we walked down by there just so I could kind of get an idea, because I wasn't part of the commission at the time when all of that was going on. What I see today is when you talk about that bark mulch and stuff, you can see several ruts in it from the rain that the bark mulch appears now to be washing down into the brook and the wetland area. So not only was it from the old fill that may have been done. Now, we did not go onto the property, we just stayed along the road. But at least, from what we could see there's a violation now of existing material that's going into the river. So if we can document to satisfy that, yep, we sent them enforcement orders or violation notices on these dates, and there is backup to that, the next step would be to issue a violation notice or a notice of violation. We can be polite at first and just ask them to appear and explain to them the situation and see where that takes us. Ralph, you agree with that? And then I think what we should do is, we can't vote on anything now anyway, but if I'll have a chance to go through the folder with Mike, confirm by the next meeting that there is backup. Once we have a full commission, then we can vote on whether or not we want to pursue at least a polite, can you come and talk to us?
Yep.
And start with that.
Good plan.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll bring it up at the next meeting once we get some backup.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, Mark has rejoined the meeting, so we're back to 4. Actually, both Mark and Mary can. Only other item I had, the site that you folks are probably familiar with, it, Don Bingham and Eileen had 3 lots on Fisher Road. 374, I think, was the original address of the house that was there. That's been torn down. There were 3 new houses there. Local builder Ian Brennan built, or his partner built all 3. We have a request for certificate of compliance for all 4. It's accompanied by the usual certification from an engineer, Whitman Bingham. I went out on site, I think the date I noted, it was back during warmer weather in October, and walked the entire perimeter with Ian, the builder, and things are fully vegetated now. The buildings have been up and built and lived in for, I'd say, a year or more now. So they're requesting, the one order of conditions covered all 3 of those lots.
If 3 of us sign, does that make it valid, or will Mary or Ralph have to stop in and add a signature?
Ralph, next time you're by City Hall, I mean, I don't think there's anything that we need as an emergency.
I'll be there either, Mike, I'll be there either late in the week or early or on Monday.
Okay.
Ralph, do you use a middle initial? Because I can sign your name.
S.
This is interesting. Inside a year, looking for certificate of compliance.
But
pat on the back to Ian Brennan.
It is fully vegetated. Yeah.
Well, pat on the back to Ian Brennan.
And I think they needed a hydroseed at least one more time, and it was irrigated well, and it's pretty lush.
So we're going to sign that. Begs the question: 0 Minneapolis Ave, undersized lot, came before planning or zoning.
Ian Brennan.
Oh, it's coming before zoning. Is that Ian's lot? Is that to the left of his house? Remember the house on Minneapolis?
I do.
Okay.
I think that item, I saw the same thing on the ZBA agenda. I didn't think that was Minneapolis, though. I thought that was Columbia or one of those other.
0 Minneapolis. Maybe it's not in. Maybe
it's just not. It just doesn't have an address associated with it.
It's Minneapolis.
But
there might be a couple of 0 Minneapolises.
Right, there could be.
Okay, so I don't know. Ian owes us removal of stumps next to his house, and he knows it.
Which property was that?
That was
whatever
55.
number. They did one, and then
New
to
house.
the left.
Yeah.
He started putting out there, pushing stuff over
point.
there. Oh, I didn't know. I said, well, you'll be in the commission's good graces by removing it because it doesn't belong there. He said he would, and he will, but he doesn't get anything until he does. From me.
But you're signing his thing, so I have Ian's number.
Wait a minute. No, it's specific. He'll remove it, and he has to remove it. Well,
I will remind.
I was thinking of 0 Minneapolis if he's going forward with that. I'll go to zoning and tell him. You know?
Is he the applicant for?
I don't know. I was hoping you could tell me whether
it's
that was coming
different.
up. They didn't. I didn't see the applicant's name. I only saw the address.
Any other business?
I don't think so. So are we done? Motion to
Oh, would there be a motion
Do we-
to adjourn this
adjourn?
meeting?
Yeah.
And the next one would be on Wednesday, February the 1st.
You'll be there on February the 1st. You'll be there.
But not much longer. Yes.
Pardon me?
But not for many more days after
You'll be there.
that. Yes.
That's all I'm asking. Otherwise, we'd have to celebrate tonight. I celebrate. I don't know if you call it
But the
celebrate.
place is open now. You can still do that, but I think we're getting on to 9 o'clock. There was a motion and second, right?
There was a motion. Second.
To what?
Adjourn.
Okay, so there's a second. You said
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we are done. Thank you,
Good night,
Dan.
Ralph. Good night, Mary.